Welcome, everyone. We're going to get rolling here. It's 9 o'clock on the dot. I know we have quite a few folks in the room, so I'm going to do my best to keep us moving here. Let's start out with our moment of silence. Commissioner Pritchett? All right, may I have a motion to approve the April 30th, May 19th, and May 28th minutes? So moved. All right, I'll go ahead and second Commissioner Pritchett's motion. All in favor of approval of the three sets of minutes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, we don't have anything under Section E, so we're going to move on to F, the consent agenda. So far, we'll have 25, 26, 32, and 33 pulled. Would anyone like something else pulled in addition to those 25, 26, 32, and 33? All right, I'd be happy to entertain a motion to pass consent less 25, 26, 32, and 33. All right, I'll give that one to Commissioner Tabaya. I'll go ahead and second that. All in favor of passing consent less 25, 26, 32, and 33, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Okay, we'll go ahead and start with 25. We have one public comment card. Peter Carnesale. Welcome, sir.
Okay, Pete Carnesale from Brevard, New York. No, actually from Brevard, Florida. However, with a different subject for a change. Okay, number one is I'd like to thank you and Commissioner Smith for your advice the last time, and on that, which is why I'm on a different subject. All right. Basically, my problem with F-25 is the way it is phrased. It is going vendors up to and over 100,000. Basically, to me, that means that we're giving a blank check, all right, to the Tourist Development Council. If they wanted to take that out of their requirements, I would believe they should have just requested removal of the paragraph that required a limit. And I have no problem with raising a limit if it's been in there a while, and basically prices have gone up and so forth in terms of that. I do have a problem with just signing off on a blank check. So that's my basic complaint with that, all right? And that's it, really kind of short and sweet, but kind of, I feel giving a blank check means no control anymore.
I appreciate it, sir. Commissioner Pritchett?
Believe it or not, I asked about that too, and the framework that I got is they submitted this proposal, and it can't be outside of that proposal. It's for just 1 year. I thought it read a little funny myself, so I went through what they had that they're proposing. So I think it has to be within what they're submitting for this budget, so nothing can be an outlander.
Peter, do you want to come up just and give us a little bit of a brief explanation? I know we spoke about this, but that doesn't really do much for the public.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. So this is a bit of a legacy item in terms of being able to allow flexibility for the Tourist Development Office to move as the market moves. So when you're buying media, particularly in a time now when we're in uncertain times, this gives us the flexibility and the ability to shift dollars from one area to another, or cease spending in one area, or then increase spending as we see the market improve. As Commissioner Pritchett alluded to, there's a detailed marketing plan behind this, so it's not a blank check. It is absolutely defined as far as what is allowed and what is not allowed to be spent on. The vendors are listed. The county attorney's office, the risk management department, and the purchasing department have to sign off on any contracts. So it's all contracted, so it's not, we're not just flying loose and free, we're actually flying within the auspice of the purchasing process. The only change is the amount of money, because when you're buying media, as you know, media is very expensive, so a lot of these contracts are for over $100,000, so this allows us that flexibility to do that contracting.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All right, be happy to entertain a motion one way or the other. All right, a motion from Commissioner Isnardi to approve. I'll go ahead and second it. All in favor of approval of F25, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, we'll go on to F26. We do have a public comment card, and then I believe Commissioner Tobias wanted that pulled. Would you prefer we hear from Keith Winston first, or would you rather?
Sure, man.
All right, Mr. Winston? I know I saw you back there. There you are, sir. Okay, perfect. All right, Commissioner Tobias then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And they start with some questions for Mr. Weinstein, with your permission.
Sure, absolutely.
Winston, goodness gracious.
Yes, come up.
Come on down, sir. If you don't mind.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Winston, thanks for sending the letter. I apologize for not getting with you prior, but I'm sure these are softball questions. My understanding of the design for phase one of the project, is it still in the $80 to $90 million range?
Yes, the most recent estimate came in at 85 million.
85, okay. To this point, how much of that 85 million have you raised?
24 million is what we have currently, including the 10 million that is currently committed by the TDC.
I'm sorry, is that 24 inclusive of the 10?
Inclusive of that.
Okay. So private money, and my understanding is we're the last in, correct?
No, it's not specified as last in.
Okay. Either way, less than a third, it sounds like. The agreement the county had with you called for groundbreaking, I believe, by the end of next month. What stage of construction are we currently in?
Well, no stage of construction. We haven't, groundbreaking would be the very first part of that.
Okay. Have we acquired any property?
We've been, as I mentioned in the letter, everything stopped when COVID hit. That included finalizing the work with the port. So we were near to completion on a contract. We mutually both said we have other things to worry about. They had an outside firm working on it, and they stopped that contract. As you noticed, the port, like us, is having some financial challenges. So that agreement is close, but not complete.
Okay. On the 9/18/18 meeting, you said, and I quote, "I welcome this 2-year deadline to these funds to make sure we can lift fast as well as heavy." The deadline for beginning construction for the aquarium arrives next month. Clearly, as you state, not only are we not ready for construction, we haven't even secured a site. While I understand the zoo would like to build this aquarium, I believe we need to have bigger priorities. Even you have mentioned through emails that feeding animals of the zoo is probably a priority. We have priorities here too. Thank you for coming. I'm just going to provide some alternatives here, and if you want to answer any of them with the chair's discretion. But we're looking at significant shortfalls as well over the next couple of years. And this is one example of discretionary projects whose funding can be repurposed to make up for that. Commissioner Pritchett said we need to sharpen pencils. This is the opportunity to do this. We can take up this $10 million over a period of time and free up general funding through reallocation of TDT for beachfront parks. The same money that is going towards this zoo that may or may not happen could be used to fund, again, our beachfront parks, thus freeing up money for general fund to make up for revenue loss. Reallocation of TDT to increase funding towards marketing. It's very important that we get people here. If we have a more robust marketing budget, we can raise more TDT dollars and potentially down the road invest in projects like the aquarium. But that is a present need, not a future need. So I'm going to make a motion here to reject the request to extension as proposed by the East Coast Zoological Society of Florida, as this is, I think, the second or third opportunity that the board can take to reprioritize funds to make up for budget shortfalls that are impending, instead of a aquarium that was scheduled to begin but hasn't yet collected apparently a third of the funding needed, nor gotten the land necessary, nor begin construction. So that's the motion, Mr. Chair.
I'm kind of struggling. I don't see any lights here, but I'm kind of struggling as to whether or not to second that one. I spoke with Keith, I believe it was last week, at some length over some concerns that I had, which he did a very good job at addressing. But one of the things that I've been thinking about over the past several days, actually over a longer period of time than that, is whether a 3-year extension isn't just too much. If the initial amount of time that was allocated for fundraising was less than that, I understand that COVID puts everyone in a bad spot, or most everyone in a bad spot. I just don't know that I'm comfortable with 3 years. I could get behind a year. I might even be able to get behind 18 months, but anything really longer than that, I just don't see myself signing on to. I just don't want to have the county funds obligated for that period of time, because again, I don't know what's going to come up between now and then, and there may be a better option, there may be no other options, I really don't know. If someone comes up with a plan that's sufficiently specific that appears to be better than this, that we have enough detail in order to consider, I'd be happy to consider that as well, but I'm not going to scrap this without knowing to a real good degree of specificity what the alternative is that we're going to use that money for. I know there have been some items that were just mentioned, and those may be great ideas, I don't have the specifics for them. So I'm not going to support extending it for 3 years. But if someone wants to make a motion to extend it for a year, for 18 months, I'd get behind it. Commissioner Pritchett?
Yeah, I was going to throw out, statistically, after a community gets hit financially, the government follows in about 2 years. I think 2 years might be appropriate. This is staying in a reserve fund. So I wouldn't even necessarily want the county to dip into it till something came up. But that will give them a couple years to come back with a plan. And right now, we haven't even finalized this budget coming up, so that gives us that adequate period of time. So I think 2 years would be a good number, just from watching how we've had to deal with budgets government-wise. After the community's been hit, the government seems to stay fine for a couple of years, and then they seem to do some struggling. So Commissioner Lober, I think 2 years might be a good time period there without tying our hands up.
If it's important to you, I'll support 2 years. I think it's a little long, but I'll do that if that's what you'd like.
Make a motion?
Oh, Commissioner
I
Nardi.
think there's a motion on the floor.
Oh, yes, there is.
I'm in support of the project. You and I have talked at length about it. I don't have a problem. I can agree to the 2 years as well, if that's where we're headed. And we can always reevaluate and see where we're at. But the fact that there's already been $24 million invested of private money tells us that the community wants this, and I think it's a good project. We invest millions every year in marketing, so I think we're doing the right things with that. So I don't think it's lacking. I think that that's what these funds were designed for. This isn't, coming from people's salaries. This isn't coming from employees. This isn't coming from services. This is coming from the tourism tax. So I'm in support, and I'm okay with the 2 years extension, and then we reevaluate. And if you're halfway to the point and you've secured the land and you're ready to break ground, then we're even closer. So,
Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you. And Commissioner Isnardi might have mentioned it. I might have been confused. She mentioned $24 million in private. Is it $24 million in private, or is it $14 million in private plus $10 million promised?
To be exact, it's $24 million and like 26,000, because we were about to pull the trigger on this.
I don't care about $26,000. I apologize. Is that inclusive of the $10 million?
That is inclusive of the 10 million.
So the $14 million is a lot of money, but it's not $24 million. So
Okay.
More than half, but not a whole bunch. Mr. Chair, question?
Please.
I don't know why we have deadlines. There's a 2-year deadline. Now we're talking about, hey, we're going to give you an extension of a 2-year deadline. And you know what? If you don't reach it in 2 years, come back and ask for more time. I think, we do one of two things here. Either we vote this down and say, no, you have no more time, or if we're going to give Mr. Winston the opportunity to come back and reevaluate. I don't know why we give him a timeline. Why don't we say, we're going to give you this money and you can, for 20 years, if we're going to set an arbitrary deadline, a second one, and say, already up here, they don't matter. So I think we should either go with nothing, which doesn't sound like the case, or why 2 years? Again, if he's just going to come back potentially, and that's outside of his control, because obviously he doesn't know what private funding is going to be. Clearly, there could be some implications here, but either way, I would support one of those two, either no deadline whatsoever or just end it as it is.
And Keith, I'll tell you with respect to what Commissioner Tobias just mentioned, if you come back in 2 years and there isn't something incredibly extenuating, I'm probably not going to give you another extension. I'll just tell you that right now so you guys can, operate with that being understood. You may have enough votes anyway, I'm not sure. But if that makes me the bad guy, that makes me the bad guy too. But I'll give it to you this one time. But I do agree with Commissioner Tobias. There has to be a point in having deadlines. So, hopefully you'll be able to accomplish it in 2 years. But I believe you had some comments as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, sorry, just a couple things. Obviously, this is tourism funds, and it comes out of the capital tourism part of it, which is capital. It's capital projects. It's not competing with marketing. It's competing with other capital projects. And the Tourism Development Council just unanimously extended this because of the value they put on this project in driving tourism. It is all about the tourism tax. It's all about more heads and beds, 50,000 plus bed nights a year, and we have a track record of providing that. It's a major project, and that's the excitement that I think the TDC sees in it, from hoteliers to restaurateurs to everybody else. Those projects don't get done overnight, and there is huge uncertainty here with COVID. If you take a look at the projections for theme parks, it's going to be multiple years till they return. So the other interest here is giving the TDC capital funds time to build up. None of those monies are coming to me till we break ground. And it's extended over 8 years, $1.25 million a year. They want it in the future. They don't want it now because the funds are harder to come by under the current piece. So that's why everyone thought 3 years was the appropriate amount. I'll tell you why I like 3 years. It really gives me a chance to either get it done or not. Either we have it. 2 years is tight. We don't know if it's going to be another year till we recover from COVID. Everyone is looking out there. If you take a look at what the recoveries are, it's not to 2022 that most people are projecting a return to theme parks. So as much as I appreciate the concept and the idea of a limited, 3 years to me is the number that actually says this is going to work. Either we're going to bring it here or not. At that point, no money has been spent from the county. That money is going into the future anyway, so it's not like it's been held up. It's simply not spent. So, I would humbly request if we could stick to the original, and either we come back, as you said, Commissioner Lover, either we got it or we don't. Either we're not coming back, we're breaking ground. There are other significant funds we know of ready to commit, but this also matters because people are going to say, wow, that's a short leash you're on. Are we less willing to invest because you're at, really what's going to take a look at who's voted into the county. So obviously we appreciate 2 years over no extension, but the original 3-year request was thought out for very good reasons. It works for the TDC. It also works in terms of when the lagoon tax ends. And the aquarium's in place to drive money, which it does as part of it, into the lagoon as the sorrel tax ends. So I would humbly request to keep to the 3 years, as Commissioner Tobias suggested, give us either the one we want or if you want to essentially kill the project. So that would be my request, as much as I appreciate the 2 years. 3 years is either get her done or go home. 2 years, I might be here saying, look, we're at X% and we need to have this debate again, when lots of people have put in more money and more time and more energy. Thank you.
Commissioner Pritchett, then Commissioner Tobias.
Yeah, just a thought on that.
Is my light not on?
No, it's not going. And then we'll have you.
Are you here
Commissioner Smith.
today?
I'm here.
Okay.
Oh, now you got it.
Just a couple thoughts on that. We can reevaluate in a couple years, but the climate we're in right now, when we came into this, we talked about staying status quo because we don't know where this is going to land when we're done. The lagoon funds are being hit, and you guys know the tourist tax is hit. But when we even did capital projects, Mr. Winstead, we did 24-month periods to get projects done. So I think that's a fair thing, and then we can talk about it when you come back. I do like this project. And if the environment's getting to where we're getting healthier, or we figured out what we're doing in it, or you have more finances coming in, but I think that might be a fair period of time right now. And I'm not against it. I'm for this project. So I think if you're saying you won't do it for 24 months, that would make my heart sad. Okay. So I think I'm very comfortable with that one.
All right, Commissioner Tobias, then Commissioner Smith. Commissioner Smith, and then Commissioner Tobias.
You're very gracious, sir.
All right, everyone's gracious. Commissioner Smith.
I'm glad you heard my click. I would just like to weigh in. I like the project. I think it would be terrific for the county on many levels. It's going to bring people in. It's going to increase the tourist tax. It's about heads and beds. We are certainly in an uncertain time. We don't know what next month's going to look like, much less what 2 years, 3 years, 5 years is going to look like. If you're telling me at the end of 3 years, if you can't produce numbers, then you're willing to walk away. If you come back here in 2 years and you say, look, we've made significant progress, I can't imagine this board wouldn't give you another year. But my concern is something that you said. If you think some donors may be unwilling to make the commitment because it's only 2 years or 3 years, to me, that's troubling. If they make a commitment and then this thing goes south in 2 years, would they get their money back?
Yeah, you always have to live by a donor's
Okay,
wishes.
so that should alleviate their concern. And I would encourage them, if they're listening or they're going to listen to you, that if anything, by them getting involved early, that solidifies, I think, the rest of the people on this board to get behind you. So that's what my tact would be. So I'll support the 2 years.
Commissioner Tamayo?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And it sounds like I'm going down with the ship. So I do want to point out again what Mr. Winston said, because clearly people didn't hear it when he said it on 9/18, or when he just said that he wanted to stick with the original. I quote, "I welcome this 2-year deadline for these funds to make sure that we lift fast as well as heavy." Now he's asking for 3 years past the original 2. So let's look at this 80 to 90 million, $85 million. Less than 20% of that has been raised from private sources. And I know COVID's come in the last 6 months, so for 3/4 of the time, they've raised less than 20%. I mean, this is DOA, and we need to put a fork in it right now. And Mr. Winston pointed out that these are capital funds. He's absolutely correct. What he didn't mention, which I did, was that we can switch the allocation of those capital expenses into marketing per state statute. This is very important. I'm not doubting that, I mean, I'll doubt the 50,000 number, but I'm not doubting that an aquarium would bring people into Brevard County. And I don't know when it gets built, in 15 or 20 years, but we need to be concerned about next year or the year after or the year after that, at which time we'd be lucky that this even broke ground. These monies can, through action of the board, be switched into marketing that can be used as soon as those monies become available. Now, obviously, we don't have this $10 million, but we've appropriated this $10 million. So as that money does come in, we have the ability to turn around and draw more folks here. And if we do that, and if we're successful, maybe we go back and switch the capital allocations. Meanwhile, it doesn't preclude Mr. Winston from continuing to fundraise with the project. No deadline over his head, just no $10 million. If he was $15 million away and we were part of it, maybe he'd have an argument. But we're talking, they're less than, what is this? They're less than 33% to the finish line here. Let's be honest with ourselves. Let's be honest with Mr. Winston. Maybe it's time for him to take care of the animals at the zoo right now and stop worrying about a project that has very little likelihood of ever coming to fruition. And I'm saying this because I imagine at some point down the road, in 2 or 3 years, Mr. Winston's going to come back, and I want to be on the record very clearly that as he said, I welcome this 2-year deadline. I want to be very clear that this project, I don't support this project, and clearly neither do donors.
Just one thought on something that was mentioned a couple moments ago. As far as donors getting their money back if this project doesn't go forward in a certain amount of time, You'd mentioned that something along the lines of you have to live by the wishes of the donors. Are you obligated to give the money back? I've just never heard of someone donating money to a 501c3 and then asking to have it returned.
It all depends on the donor and their wishes. Every donor can craft it as they so choose.
But as far as anything you've received thus far, would you be obligated to return the money if it doesn't get constructed, let's say, in the next 24 months?
Well, I want to point out one thing. We didn't pull the trigger. We had initial gifts, and just to clarify the record, we were just about to pull the trigger on the fundraising when COVID hit. So in terms of our track record, you work to a point, and then you have your ducks in the row, and then you start the fundraising. You don't simply do it as you go along. So I don't know. We have we have a major gift that came in, and we have a bunch of small gifts that we call over the transom. We didn't ask for them, so I haven't checked with those donors. In other words, the smaller gifts that came in, I don't know what they would do. The major giver who sort of catalyzed the program, their wish is to make the aquarium. If not, they are open to a conversation to give it to the zoo. But that's really every gift, everyone is handled individually.
Keith, let me ask you, and I'm sorry to keep pressing the point here, but I'm just trying to get a better understanding, which I've not gotten up to this point. When you say you'd have to check with the individual donors, are you talking about folks that have already given money?
Correct.
So you don't know whether you're contractually obligated or your organization is to return the money if they request it?
Our contractual obligation with every donor, if they say, I'm giving for the aquarium, is if it can't be done, you have to go back to the donor and say, are you okay with this option? That's how
I
we
don't
work.
understand. Can you give me just a little more detail? What do you mean in terms of are you okay with the option?
With every possible donation, if we're going to build an X exhibit and we decide not to build it, we go back to the donors who gave for that exhibit. Unless they say it's for general operating support, you work with every donor. What they say they give the money for, either we deliver for anything, or we go back and say, are you okay if we use it for this?
Well, I don't think we're talking about using it for a different purpose. We're talking about donors bailing because they get, instead of a 2-year deadline, potentially a 3-year deadline, or vice versa.
No. My concern that wasn't my concern about. My concern was donors going, I don't know if the county's going to support this, so they don't give in the first place. It's not that.
In terms of folks that have already given, to your understanding, whether this gets built 2 years, 3 years, or 10 years from now, there's no legal obligation on the organization part?
It's about future gifts that I was referring to.
Okay, all right, that's understandable.
Yes.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Say if they gave it to the zoo, you don't have to return it. If they gave it specifically to the aquarium and then we pull the aquarium, you must return
That makes
the funds.
sense.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Future gifts, it's just future fundraising. You want to give as quality a plan as you can, and you want to give options. So it's not about current gifts.
I'll throw one other thing out there, just for you to look at with your board.
Yeah.
I know that the current plan, to my understanding, involves $1 going to the NEP for each admission.
Paid admission, correct.
For each paid admission, which is, I don't expect them to spend $1 if they're comping someone's ticket.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense. But rather than $1, since we have no idea what the admissions are going to be, I'd like you guys to look at perhaps making that a flat percentage so that it would scale up or down as the admission price changes. Look at, let's say if the admission is $30 and it's $1, I mean, whether you want to set it at 3 or 3.5%, something to tie it so that 10 years from now, it's not a fraction of the value that it is on the front end.
Gotcha.
So just something to look at, and I'm not making it a condition of my vote today, but if you come back and ask for an extension, if that's not already in place, I wouldn't consider giving an extension without having that based on a flat percentage,
Gotcha.
as opposed to a dollar value.
Okay.
All right, I don't see any further lights. Commissioner Tobias, unfortunately, your motion dies for lack of second. So I believe, Commissioner Pritchett, you were going to make a motion to
Yes, sir.
extend it for 2 years?
I make a motion to extend it for 2 years.
All right, I'll go ahead and second that motion from Commissioner Pritchett. All in favor of her motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
All right, passes 4-1 with Commissioner Tobias in the negative. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All right, we'll move on to F32. And I know Commissioner Tobias and Commissioner Isnardi asked to have this pulled, so let's give Commissioner Isnardi the first shake at it.
Well, first, I wanted to hear a little more about it, why it was rejected.
All right.
I don't know
Who do we
if that's
have
from staff or,
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
can I grab that? to begin
Is that
with?
all right?
sure.
Yep.
First of all, I wanted to thank staff. I think given the information that they were presented with, I think they did a very good job. And in all honesty, I think they made the correct decision. This is concerning wraps on those boxes. The amount that the derivation they got was $10,000. or roughly in revenue. And for controls being given up, I think that that was the appropriate decision. Had I been sitting on that board, or I would have made the exact same one. So I thank the selection committee for their time, their effort, and I fully agree. However, more information has come forward, and I am going to make a motion here in just a second. I would like to, there was only one respondent here, and so the motion would be to enter into negotiations with the only respondent, that being One Street Media, with the express additional terms of a minimum guarantee of $50,000 in revenue. It would be contingent on the company securing the rights through 4 FDOT boxes in the county. I think it becomes a different proposition if we're guaranteed $50,000. I think that then it might be a viable option to work with. If the company is not interested in going in that direction, I think that we should fully, utterly, and totally walk away. But I think the $50,000 is a starting point that may be a viable option for us to at a minimum, look into.
Can I finish?
Please.
And before you spoke, I was going to say something similar. I wanted to find out not only why staff rejected, because I figured that information would be out to the public as the concern with revenue. But again, I wanted us to move forward, at least to explore the option of possibly coming up with a revenue agreement, because I think that this is great. It's a great opportunity for the county to capture some revenue that we haven't before. It works in other municipalities and other counties, and I think this is something that we should definitely pursue instead of just rejecting altogether. And if what you come up with is not an agreement like that you can live with, or maybe perhaps you bring it back to the board as far as options go. But I do like the idea of the minimum. And if staff is able to negotiate more than that, I'm all for that. So I would like us to go back to the table, for sure.
All right, I don't see any further lights, so I'll just chime in at this point. Oh, Commissioner Smith, there you go, sir.
I would like to ask Commissioner Tobias, where did you come up with the 50,000? Is that representative of what?
It's a very good question. The $10,000, again, staff did an amazing amount of work on this, and I looked at the tail end of this rather than being involved in the process for numerous reasons. But the $10,000, they looked at boxes in another municipality that didn't have the traffic flow and the revenue potential. And so the county staff took the most conservative approach, and I think that's the right way to go. However, speaking with the company after, it's very apparent that they think they can do quite a bit better. And the way that we enforce that is not by taking them at their word that they can think that they can draw 30 or 40 or 50% more than what other municipalities are offering, but by providing a revenue guarantee. And if we have that revenue guarantee, I think that probably leaves us in a situation, a minimum guarantee, where we start at this point, and as revenue grows, we potentially have the ability to make quite a bit more.
So you're going to tie in like a percentage so that we get a 50 minimum and then a percentage over and above?
Well, I would certainly leave that to the negotiating committee. I think Mr. Darling probably, has a better handle on this. Hopefully, it would be they'd meet that $50,000 threshold, and then at a certain percentage over that $50,000, as revenues would grow, hopefully, so too would ours. But if they were under, and we had the guarantee of $50,000, I think that would be, in my opinion, worth going forward. But again, the $10,000 that they came up with, I thought was fair, but not worth going forward. So that's why I think $50,000 is worth sending it back.
So why don't you make a motion?
Okay.
Just to move this along so we don't get half an hour, 45 minutes.
We've got a little more commentary too,
worth
though.
of-
Sure. Sorry, my motion is enter negotiation with the on-street media with the express additional terms of minimum guarantee of $50,000 in revenue. The contract would be contingent on the prospect securing the rights to the FDOT boxes in the county.
Second.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Yeah, that's a pretty creative idea, Commissioner Tobias, because they thought they could bring in 60, so I like that. And why don't we do, as your suggestion, we put a little variable into it also, so any percent that would have been over 50,000, they go back to the 20% if it's more.
I'm pretty sure Mr. Darling will handle that.
Right, but
Yeah, I
we're
have
making
no
this
problem with
motion that we go ahead and,
I don't want to give
okay,
you too much direction.
okay. But that's kind of what they said they would do, but I like your 50,000 minimum, and then, so.
So just real briefly, I'm going to chime in, and I'm not going to twist anyone's arm to do differently than they think is appropriate by any means, but I didn't like the idea when it first came up. To me, the idea of sticking something that's intended to capture the attention of a driver at intersections and really focusing on the busiest of intersections where the highest traffic flow is, I don't mind if there's a private enterprise that has billboards that are properly permitted up there. That's certainly their right to do that. But I just don't know that we should be adding to that, potentially competing with private enterprise by putting up our own advertisements and further distracting folks that, quite frankly, are probably already distracted enough with all the different gadgets they have in cars. So, I understand there's a balance to be had, but in my mind, it doesn't weigh out. So I respect your votes, but I'm not going to support it for that reason. So we've got a motion, we've got a second. I don't see any further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay? All right, passes 4-1 with me in the negative. Commissioner, I'm doing it again. Mr. Abate?
Minimum 50,000 is annual, correct?
Yeah, yes, sorry, I was not clear on that.
Yeah, I think everyone contemplated that. Did anyone have any concerns? All right, so we'll move on to F33. I had asked to have this one pulled. Rather than us having an executive session that, quite frankly, I don't know that we need to have, I would just ask for a motion to authorize staff and the chair to sign and execute any necessary documents to settle this globally for an amount of $57,123.53, inclusive of all costs and fees.
I make that motion.
All right, I'll go ahead and second it. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, passes unanimously. All right, so that's all we had pulled for F. We do have some comment cards under G. First up, we'll have Michael Bramson from Altamont Springs. Thank you for your patience.
I can take this off so it doesn't sound weird.
Sure.
Okay. Good morning. Mike Bramson, Altamont Springs, President of the Brevard County Firefighters Union. With everything going on right now, I'm just here to speak on, the clock didn't start.
I apologize. Thank you.
That's all right. With all the things going on, just want to bring some acknowledgement to what's going on in, basically what's going on in the oceans right now. First of all, everything in fire rescue is as best as you can imagine. A lot of the support from you guys have gone through on how we deal with COVID with the firefighters, which is fantastically appreciated by everybody who is out there doing what they do. We have a new person up there, EOC, Emergency Management, Mr. John Scott. We have yet to have an event to test the trials of what's going on with our new people in place, but we hear fantastic things. We're excited what's going on, and which brings me to why I came up here today. In the history of Florida, there's always been an anticipation of what to do during an emergency. Now we have a couple of things declared state of emergencies, a lot of things being compounded. So what I'm asking the board, the county manager, alert EOC, EM, public safety group, and the citizens of Brevard County and the visitors of Brevard County to pay attention to what's going on. When we do have an event and when we have an opportunity for, let's just say, evacuations or stay in place or get fuel or go shopping, we need to understand the weight of that, and hopefully that there could be some weight put on, let's pay attention, let's move forward, let's do what's right for the citizens and visitors of Brevard. If the people here are safe and perform best practices to be safe, that will in turn make a safer environment for response and allow the firefighters to do their job. The COVID compounded by a natural disaster has been observed in North Carolina, Louisiana, those poor people in Texas and all the things going on. It is basically organized chaos, and if we perform best safe practices up front, that will help the firefighters perform their job just in case something happens on the back end. So more of a recognition that we're in the peak of hurricane season. We have broken many records with these storms. We've done this before. We've had 4 storms sitting off our coast before. We know what to do. We know how to do it. We just need the help of Brevard County to make sure that we can actually execute what's asked of us to do. So congratulations to the EOC. Mr. John Scott's doing a pretty good job. We're very happy to see what things are happening out of there. Besides that, everybody stay safe.
Appreciate it, sir.
Uh-huh.
All right, next up, we have Charles Tovey from Melbourne. Then after Mr. Tovey, we'll have Ms. Sullivan from South Patrick Shores. Welcome, sir.
Charles Tovey. Before you start the clock, I'd like to mention that there's congestion at the table, and when you come on time or early, there's a line to where you can't get to the agendas or the card, and I am in a hardship position. I lost my phone because of the harassment of somebody, and nobody could help me, even though I went to the commissioner and the sheriff's office, and it's still calling. So I lost the phone. I don't have access to everything.
Mr. Tovey, let me just fix that for you. Sally, when he leaves, can you give him a couple of the pink cards that he can take with him?
I have them
Okay.
ahead of time, and I was here last week, and it's selective enforcement about the rules, and I understand Sally has a lot, but if her assistants could process the cards and the agenda, that would leave Miss Sally to do her job and
I'll
on the
talk with staff
items and
about it,
everything.
Mr.
And there's
Tovey.
always congestion, and there's a 6-foot rule law that people don't abide by, and there's 30 people in front of you, and even though you come first, you have to go through all those people just to turn the card in, and then,
Well, yeah,
anyways.
we'll address it with staff, but I've got to start your clock, if I may, sir.
Thank you, sir, and
Yes,
you've
sir.
always been kind to me. I appreciate that, Mr. Lober.
My pleasure.
I wrote about the lagoon on my card. Almost finished, and I'll have all the information, and that's what I've been waiting on, the conclusion. So I'll have all the information and turn it on. The other thing I wrote on my card was about my property state, and because the sheriff won't keep anybody off my property and stop them from destroying it, I had to sit there and figure, how could I keep these people off? They have this, they have that, and they have that. So I reverted back to my childhood days and remembered Mario Brothers, and you have to do this and ring the bell in order to get the accomplishment done. So I mixed everything up, and it's cluttered so people don't freely walk on my property and do anything they want while the sheriff and his deputies tell me, threaten me, and I'm acting irrational while they destroy my property, and a bulldozer chasing me on my own property. I have the video, and it's okay. Just like the harassment phone calls on my mom's phone that I had to use because I've been displaced from the Board of Commissioners and the county attorney, and Carol McCormick, mayor of Palm Shores. So that was the state of the property. The next thing I was going to say was my religious rights. Why aren't I doing anything besides the hardship and all the stuff that people caused me, and having to overcome that and get out of it? Because my religious rights and my faith, not my religion, but my faith, there's a parable about cleaning your house. And if you clean your house and don't fill it with good stuff, then 7 times the amount of stuff that you cleaned out comes back and fills your house with bad stuff. So there's a lot of issues and a lot of reasons that people don't understand and people don't care. And I'm an individual, and I have religious rights, and I have unalienable rights that people all walk over for the selective enforcement of their jobs, and it's not okay. And what I wanted to say was speak on F2 about giving all the proper Brevard County taxpayer properties away. They give it away for $2, and then the guy that they give it to sells it for $1 million. And We're running out of land. The county has no money. We're begging, people are begging for money from this and that, and we can't do that, but we're giving property away for $2. Yeah, I get it. I understand. Just about finished, and I have lots of stuff I could speak on, but I try and adhere and play by everybody's rules, and then they change suddenly when it's my turn. I'll save more for later, and the lagoons, I'm all the way finished. I'm writing down and providing the information. Thank you, and excuse my disposition. It's a symptom.
Thank you, sir. All right, Sandra Sullivan's up next. I like the hat.
Okay, one moment. Oh, my glasses are fogging up.
Yeah, you're more than 6 feet, so I'm not going to tell you you have
Thank
to
you.
wear it by any means.
Okay, Sandra Sullivan, South Patrick Shores. So I've been up here before talking about the High Tower Preserve. I just wanted to give a follow-up. I spent considerable time on the Clerk of Court site. I looked up the preserve agreement that is on that, in the documents there. The book and page that it references includes the property that the county owned at that time. That was purchased in, I think, 1993 by the county for $18,000. That's the High Tower Park. And that, as part of the preserve agreement, it was agreed that the county would lease that and would be annexed into the city. So there's some issues that park does come under the preserve agreement. Additionally, I just wanted to inform you all that the city of Satellite Beach had on their agenda to put in paid parking with certain spots, free parking with a city decal to reserve those spots for the city. The agreement with the county is that there's no differential with parking because that was a county park. It's for county residents, okay? And that right is in there. I am asking the county because of the egregious violations of that preserve and the county's covenants that the county move under those covenants to take back that park for the protection of the county residents. We're very concerned about the impact that preserve was created to be a dark and undisturbed beach for the preservation of endangered green sea turtles, hence the hat, right? And so what are we doing? That preserve agreement has clauses in there to protect the adjacent properties for height limitations, which were specified as part of that agreement in the implementation with changes to the comp plan, and also with land use restrictions. Both of them, the management agreement specifically says limits human activity. A hotel which has a FAR of 1.3 intensity usage that violates the city's own comp plan by 30% is going to put high intensity usage that the UCF has determined in comparing to another area that will affect the sea turtle nesting. One last thing. There was a meeting Friday with Patrick Air Force Base with the Assistant Secretary of Defense. I was invited to that meeting in May, but somehow that got changed. But I think maybe Kurt Smith could give an update on that meeting, which was very important, discussing the PFAS contamination coming off the base, particularly to Cocoa Beach, and the enforcement of the 70 parts per trillion health advisory, the groundwater that is getting into the air, and what the proposed things that the base will be doing to address that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. All right, that's it for public comment under the section G here. We'll move on to H, public hearings. Before we go to H1, or I should say as we address H1 here, I'm hoping to have staff just give a little more clarity on what's happened. And I know I've spoken with Mr. Bate and then Don Walker as well about this. I think we've done a lot of things well as a county, and I think we've done some things poorly as a county. One of the things that we've not done quite as well as I had hoped is reaching out to the folks that live here and work here to let them know what specifically occurred with respect to the trash rate increase. The fact is, a lot of folks that have approached me that have been the most upset about the increase were under the impression that this didn't go out to bid, that we simply handed it to a company or selected a company through some other method or through no method at all, perhaps. But the fact is, this was competitively bid. It did go to the lowest bidder that had any ability to perform on the contract, and it was negotiated down by a high six-digit number over and above the low bid that was made. So I know Don has put together something that he's asked me to review. Quite frankly, I didn't have a chance to review it this weekend, to do a little more in the way of public outreach to get that across. But the fact is, I can tell you that those of us that supported the increase didn't support it because we want anyone to pay more to have their trash collected. We supported it because it was the cheapest option that was available to us in order to have the trash continue to be collected. And to maintain the same level of service that everyone's used to, that's what we went with. Even had we gone down to once-a-week pickup instead of twice-a-week pickup, which a lot of folks were opposed to, there still would have been a double-digit percentage increase over and above what was being paid for twice-a-week pickup that we've had for some time now. So unfortunately, we're in a position where we didn't really have a choice if we want the trash to continue to get collected. It would be the same as if we had the price of asphalt going up and we had to pave. The price for asphalt, if that goes up around the area, we may not have an alternative but to pass those costs along. We don't have any other realistic way of paying for that that's equitable. So with that, I don't know if staff wants to chime in just a little bit in terms of how the process went before we have public comment, because I just don't want folks to get up here and waste the bulk of their 3 minutes talking about how this should have been bid when it in fact was bid. Yuri?
Yes, sir. The current, just mic on?
I don't know if that's picking you up.
Hello?
Oh, yep, it is.
Okay. The current contract ends in November or September 30th of this year. It had a 3-year extension on it. That 3-year extension was by mutual agreement. Some time ago, Waste Management indicated that they did not want to use the 3-year agreement, and at that time we came back to the board. The alternatives were pretty much to go out for RFP was the only alternative that we had at that point in time. The board directed staff to go out for RFP. The board also directed staff to look at different options within those RFPs, to break the county into two, to have a one-time-a-week collection of garbage, and also to see what was the effect of limiting yard waste. We looked at, we went out for RFP, which is a request for proposal. We came back and we saw that Republic Services had submitted one, Waste Management had submitted one, and so had an outfit called FCC. That, out of all of those, Waste Management was the lowest one. We looked at the different alternatives, and there was no difference in limiting yard waste. It was the same price limiting yard waste as unlimited yard waste. Obviously, the limit of 10 cubic yards was not a game changer. We also looked at what was the difference in one time a week versus twice a week. One time a week would have resulted in an increase of the payment to Waste Management of 18%. The board looked at that, had a meeting regarding that, heard the citizens, and decided to go with twice a week. I think it was based on the output from the citizens in general. Then we went out there and we did some negotiations with Waste Management. We started out with a 49% increase. We ended up with a 39% increase. Again, there was no other alternative but to go out for requests for proposals. At that point in time, we also had the contract was approved. The next step would have been to go out for the public hearing the public hearing requires us to send out letters. Those letters were sent out in August 4th. The letter included a paragraph, the first paragraph on it, and the second sentence in which we stated that the result of this competitive process were the proposed fees. So we did try to convey as much information as we could within the letter, and the letter did say that it was a competitive process. Nevertheless, as a result of the phone calls and the emails and letters that we got, obviously that wasn't clear enough. So there is a weak point, and I'll admit to it. But it was there, and it was also in all the process. Out of all the phone calls that we got around 160 phone calls. That the phone calls were broken as follows. 4 phone calls were for the raise, 76 were against, and 80 of them, half, which wanted clarification on what exactly did we mean by the letter. So obviously we have to work a little bit more on the letter.
Yuri, let me ask you as well, and I'm not picking on Palm Bay for any reason other than that it was just in the news not too long ago. Do you happen to know, and if you don't, that's fine, what their percentage increase was? Because I know they just went out to bid as well in the recent past.
I believe it was around 50%.
Okay.
But it ends up being that Palm Bay, if I'm not mistaken, will pay around $25 per month. We are going to be paying around 15-something per month.
Okay, so they were already at a higher rate?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my goal is to try to get across the fact that this isn't something that's unique to Brevard County's collection contract. I mean, the fact is...
Just by looking at those 2 results,
Yeah.
I am, and we're one of the 2 people that first contract expires in Brevard County. I would not be surprised to see that wave of increases go throughout the entire contracts that not only Waste Management has, but Waste Pro has in Brevard County.
And let me
now
ask you, I hate to
Republic.
ask questions I don't know the answer to, but out of the 160 or so that you mentioned called about the letter, did any of them have a feasible suggestion or something that might work that would provide us an alternative? Because that's the thing. I'm looking at what our alternative is, and letting trash pile up, I don't think anyone would suggest is a reasonable alternative. Has anyone had an idea that we could implement at a countywide scale?
The alternative suggested was to go out for RFP, which we did. Also to reduce the service to 1 time a week. I think there was some expectation that would cut the price in half, which it really doesn't because of capital investments and all that stuff. Other than that, it's too high.
So I guess just to get across again, and I know you've hammered on it, but I just want to hit it one more time. Even if we were to degrade service from twice a week pickup to once a week pickup, there would still be a roughly 20% increase in the cost to have it picked up. Is that right?
There would probably be a little bit more because of the overhead on it, but you're about right. It would be in the very, very low 20s.
Okay. And the county itself, to my understanding, this increase that we're simply passing along, we're not gaining financially from this increase, are we? This is simply our costs being passed along to the taxpayers.
No, the county has set up the collection as a separate fund. It's an enterprise fund in which the money cannot be used for anything other than the intended purpose, which is support the collection service.
Perfect.
There are several expenses in there. There's not one single employee in there. There is no operating supplies or anything like that. It's the contractor. It's the payment to the tax collector for helping us collect the money or for collecting the money for us, period. There's a payment to the property appraiser for use of their database, and there's an overhead cost allocation payment, which is normal in enterprises that are above a certain size. Other than that, there is no other expense. There's a reserve for hurricanes of $1.4 million, and there's a reserve for not quite 2 months of payment. That reserve is used for, the contract starts on October 1st. the money from the taxes start flowing around in November. So it's to bridge that gap.
I appreciate it, sir.
That's all the cost that there is in there.
All right, we've got quite a few cards for public comment. I'll just give you all the lineup in terms of who I'm going to call in what order here. All right, first up, we'll have Gregory Sakala from Merritt Island. Then we'll have Pat DeBella from Melbourne. Then we'll have Mark Cleary from Cocoa. After Mark, we'll have Sylvia Sanchez from Melbourne. Then Christy Postel from Melbourne. And then Lenicio Calderon from Cocoa. And then last on this, we'll have Jay Shaw from Vieira. So let's have Greg Sakala come up first from Merritt Island, please. Welcome, sir.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name's Greg Sakala. I live on Merritt Island near the airport. I've lived at that address for like 25 years. This is not what you expect. The service that I have been getting from Waste Management has been degrading badly over the last 6 years. For the first 18 years or so, I rarely had to call Waste Management about a missed pickup. About 6 years ago, that turned to about once every other month. About 4 years ago, it was about every 6 weeks. The last couple of years, it's like monthly. The last 18 months, it's been like once every 3 weeks. The last couple months, last 6 months or so, it's like weekly. I have called your office, Mr. Lobo, 3 times about this, and I've been passed off to Brevard County Waste Services. And, oh, we'll get back to you. Never hear anything back. I called Waste Management. Well, we'll have the route supervisor contact you. We'll have a manager contact you. Nobody contacts me. So that's what I'm complaining about. Currently, I'm only paying $2.70 a week for pickup. That's a good deal. Even with the rate increase that you're talking to be $3.75 a week, that's still a good deal. Even in 27 at $4.50 a week, I'm not complaining. I don't mind complaining if I get what I'm paying for, and I'm not. Example, we had a holiday on Monday. No pickup. On Thursday, there was no pickup. I called them about it on Friday. No pickup. Monday comes around. No pickup. I call again. And I finally got picked up Thursday. It's the garbage pickup that I'm having problems with. The yard waste is good. The recycling is good. It's the garbage pickup. And I think it's ridiculous having to have a garbage can sit out on the street for a week and a half before it's picked up. And that's my complaint. I'm not at all opposed to this rate increase. Hey, everything goes up. I do think 66% increase over 6 years is a little bit much, but that's life. Thank you.
I appreciate it, sir. Yuri, could you do me a favor with respect to missed pickups? Could you give the public just a little bit of info on what our remedy is, our contractual remedy with respect to missed pickups and what they should do in order to help us in order to make use of that remedy to help the taxpayers out?
Yes, sir. Missed pickups are okay. The county's divided into north and south. Every section of the county has a shall we call it a leeway of 20 missed pickups. Anything over that gets fined. It gets fined if we, meaning my department, is notified of it. If we're notified of it, we will sit down on a monthly basis with Waste Management and assess fines. These fines are not something that Waste Management, in the sense of pays for, but what we do is we reduce the payment to Waste Management by the amount calculated in the fines. So it's pretty much tightened as long as we are aware that there is a problem. If we are not aware that there is a problem, then we can assess the fine.
What's the amount of the fine
The amount of the fine is $50.
for each missed pickup?
Yes, sir.
And what's the best way for someone who has a missed pickup to reach out to your department?
There's a couple of ways of doing it. If you go into the county website, there's a way of, brevardfl.gov/solid waste. And towards the end of it, there's a place where you can submit a complaint. You don't have to wait until the 8 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You can submit it at any time and it reaches us. You can also call 321-633-2042 and submit a complaint on there.
633-2042?
Yes, sir. At that point in time, we will act as the intermediate, we will be in the middle of the situation as long as the date of the pickup has passed. In other words, that you were supposed to be picked up on Tuesday and you're calling at Tuesday to say that the guy didn't pick up at 10 o'clock when he normally picks up at 10 o'clock. Well, they have until 8 o'clock to pick up. But on Wednesday, it's a missed pickup. They did not do what they're contracted to do.
So in essence, after the first 20, in a
24
particular, yeah, but after the first 20 missed pickups in a month, every single pickup after that that's missed.
That's one of the things that they get fined. They get fined for quite there's a list of things of potential fines. That's one of the most common ones. There's changing the schedules of the routes. There's oil spills that they did not take care of, reports that they haven't submitted. Normally, those fines don't get used. The majority of and the most common is missed pickups.
I appreciate it. So
It's Brevard County, no, sorry.
BrevardFL.gov.
BrevardFL.gov.
And then it's /solid waste?
Yes, sir.
So brevardfl.gov /solid waste. You may or may not have to put the www in the beginning, I'm not sure. All right, so next up we'll have Patricia DeBella from Melbourne. Saw Bob the other day. I was wondering when we were going to see you. Good to see you.
Morning, everybody. Can I change?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think they both work too, so if one's more convenient for you.
Okay. Well, I appreciate all the work that you did and the explanation that you just gave. You stole some of my thunder.
Sorry.
But ironically, the gentleman that was just up, we had to call yesterday for a pickup because we've had palm branches on our front lawn for weeks. And one of our neighbors, who happens to be my husband's golf buddy, called and said, hey, when are you going to call them and do something about that? We didn't know we had a call. The woman on the other end said, oh, we're sorry, we didn't know they didn't pick it up. So we didn't have to call, they just weren't picking them up. And golf is the reason I'm up here. Waste Management sponsors the Phoenix Open. It's the Waste Management FedEx Phoenix Open. And my husband watches a lot of golf, and I happened to catch that. So I went online and I looked. Last January, 2019, they signed a 10-year contract with the Phoenix Open. This is the press release. And they were lauding how they just gave millions and millions of dollars to charities, which is great. But the other issue is it's the Waste Management FedEx Phoenix Open. I have a choice if I have a package to mail, and I don't mail packages twice a week. I can go to the post office, I can go to UPS, and I can go to FedEx. I have no choice with Waste Management. They've raised just for the first year, they raised us 40%. And I just see this is really wrong. Something's not right here, because they can do what they want with their money, but they're taking my money to do this, and I'm thinking, well, I should at least be able to write it off on my taxes as a charitable contribution for all the charities that they're giving to. So I really appreciate you guys covering it and looking into it and doing the best you can do, but I didn't know if you knew about this.
No, it's interesting.
Yeah. Give it to, who do I give it to?
Sure, we can add it to the minutes as well if you want to give it to the clerks up there.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much. Thanks. All right, next up we have Mark Clary from COCO. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for the time. I live in Canaveral Groves. I've had the same issues as the gentleman from Merritt Island for about the same time period. Waste Management will currently tell you that it's because of COVID. It has nothing to do with COVID. It's been at least 6 years. My containers either don't get picked up, they get partially emptied, they get left down the street, they get left on other people's properties, or they get dropped in my driveway. Yard waste gets ignored for 2 months at a time. I had meant to bring pictures today of my neighbors who have had stacks of yard waste sitting for 3 months at a time. Normally, if I were to do a lousy job, I would be disciplined by my job or I would be fired. Waste Management is doing a lousy job and we're giving them a 38% raise. I was born and raised in the city of North Miami. North Miami provides water, sewer, and trash collection. In North Miami, if you're not getting the service from the city of North Miami, you can not pay your bill. And yes, your service will get cut off, but they're not getting paid. Here, I'm not getting the service that I'm paying for, but I'm still paying for it. And that's not how it's supposed to go in this country. I would be fine with the garbage only being picked up once a week if it were actually picked up. It isn't. I'm paying for a service that I'm not receiving, and the board is rewarding Waste Management for performing a service that they're not performing. I would also like to point out that I didn't get the letter that was supposedly sent out to all the residents, nor was I aware of the hearing that supposedly took place, I guess, at the end of last year. Had I known about that, I have a contact at a vendor, which this gentleman didn't mention, and somehow they weren't solicited for service, and I would have been happy to connect the board or him or anywhere in the county with that contact had I had the opportunity. I haven't had the opportunity to speak on this issue until today, and I've wanted this opportunity for years. Thank you for giving it to me.
Thank you. Yuri, let me ask you, so as far as the gentleman just mentioned, as far as businesses not being solicited for service, did we just put it out there? And if so, how did we do that? Did we restrict anyone from putting in proposals?
No, sir. There was no restriction on it. I'm not too sure where it got advertised, but it was advertised for the general public.
Stephen, do you know, or?
There was nobody restricted from it, sir. It's posted on VendorLink and DemandStar, as well as the county's website.
So I'm just not familiar with, this level of particularity within the industry. Is that something that most of the folks that would be in a position to bid on this sort of contract would look?
Yes. And that's where the county puts all their solicitations.
Okay, so it's not that it was done differently than it has been in the past, or that we've somehow reduced how it was advertised?
No, sir.
No, sir. And in fact, if you look at who put in for it, I had never heard of the company FCC before.
FCC?
Uh-huh. And they put in for it. But there's other people that I do know of that didn't put in for it. I'm not too sure why.
So it's not that we asked any particular company to bid, we just simply made it available?
Correct.
Okay. All right, Ms. Sanchez from Melbourne. Thank you for your patience, too.
My name is Sylvia Sanchez. I live in, and I'm representing here today the neighborhood of Flora and Fauna Estates. We're like off Lake Washington, west of 95. And first of all, I'm a disabled veteran, and I really expect better service. And I hear other neighbors that have gone through the same thing as I have, that sometimes my yard waste is not picked up for 5-6 weeks at a time, and a lot of missed regular garbage when they come by, that I got to call and call and call, sometimes on a weekly basis. But I've narrowed it down to why they don't pick up. I think a lot of times they do it on purpose. If you have any kind of political signs in your yard for whoever you want to vote for, and you represent, if it's a Republican or conservative sign that you have out there, your garbage will not get picked up. And I am very concerned about this, and just because you're not in the right party, it's not right. You're paying for a service, and you just get ignored, and you call and ask for a supervisor. And you keep getting ignored, and I really have a problem with this increase. I have to decide every month between medicine and food, and I have a real problem with all of a sudden such a big increase, $50 all the way up to $100. And I would implore you guys to maybe look at the numbers again, get somebody else. I don't think it has been explored correctly, because a lot of my neighbors didn't get the letter. When I said something to my neighbors, and I was trying to get more neighbors to come today out of their busy schedules, it was news to them. And I don't know if on purpose it hasn't been sent out to everyone, or maybe it's too costly, or what happened, but it hasn't been advertised enough. And I don't think this issue has been explored enough either. So that's really all I had, and I hope you guys look into this situation a little further. And I also have a problem with it being a separate bill and not being part of our taxes like we've had for the last, 20 years. Another separate bill, I really can't handle another separate bill. At least in the taxes, you have to pay your taxes, and automatically, in my case, my mortgage company takes it out. But another separate bill and another extra increase, it's like, oh my God, life is hard enough. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yuri, let me ask you, what's the story as far as the change with there being a separate bill versus being part of the taxes?
No, sir, there is no change there. It's a special assessment which gets incorporated into your taxes on just below the general fund taxes on a separate line, but still part of the tax bill. That's why we pay the property appraiser.
Well, let me ask you too. As far as the letter that went out to folks, did it go out first class mail or
It went out. It went out first class mail to every single address that's in the property appraiser's database as the owner of the property. We have found that there was some that had sold the property, and it went to the prior owner. Those were the minority, but it is supposed to have been sent out to the same address as the tax bill gets sent out to.
So if someone's
the owner of the
renting,
property.
if someone's renting, it wouldn't necessarily have gone to them. It would go to wherever the owner's listed
It would go
address
to
is?
the owner of the property.
Okay. And how long ago roughly did that go out?
That went out on August the 2nd.
August the 2nd? Okay, so some time ago at this point. All right. Appreciate that. Christy Postel? Am I mispronouncing it?
No, you said it correct.
All right, from Melbourne. Thank you.
All right, guys, I have been here for a year now, and I come from Santa Rosa County, another county in Florida. We paid our garbage quarterly, so we didn't have it taken in our taxes. What we are paying now is absolutely great, but this increase is hurting a lot of people. 39% in 1 year, that's a $55 increase on our mortgage that we're going to have to pay, including the next year's increase. If there's any way to take that 39% and do it over the 7 years, instead of having that 39% increase over 1 year, it's a lot. I never heard Waste Pro. Did they put in a bid?
No, ma'am.
I know our commissioners there in our county would call the different garbage companies, because they actually, the last year I was there, they called the different ones, and they had each one doing a different part of our county, which we got a decrease. Never see that. My thing is the increase. I mean, that is, you've got so many retirees down here, a lot of people disabled, and that specific type of increase needs to be done over the 7 years, not in one big bulk. And I have to agree, y'all are paying a lot less than we paid. When I was with Waste Management up there, we paid $55 a quarter. Y'all are paying 34 right now, 35. And that's what, I was just stunned by what we're paying here. When we changed to Waste Pro, we went down to, less than that. So I would definitely look into spreading this over the 7, if we have to do it this way, to actually spread it over the 7 years. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, Mr. Juarez Calderon from COCO. Going once, going twice. Okay. And then Jay Shaw from Viera. Last call. Okay. All right, Mr. Abate, what do we need to do with respect to this item?
The item is requesting the board to approve the assessments for disposal, solid waste collection and recycling assessment, and special rates and charges as included in the agenda item.
If we don't approve this, what happens?
Well, the board has already executed the contract with Waste Management. Those fees are in place. That is, as Yuri's indicated, that's an enterprise fund. You will not have the funds to pay. We have to pay Waste Management the rates that are included in the contract minus the fees that, the damages that Yuri indicated if there's any penalties that are put in place. However, they are already in place, so this assessment parallels the new contract going into place in October.
So essentially, what you're saying is if we don't push this through today, we're not going to have the funds to pay our own obligations?
Yes, as Yuri said, we had a 2-month period, but those funds are already going to be utilized for the period of time before the actual, once the assessment rate is approved, is collected by the tax collector and submitted to the board. But by the end of the year, all the funds will be depleted.
Thank you. Commissioner Pritchett?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate some of the things you said, sir.
Yes, ma'am, please.
That, we put this out for bid. We were trying to come back with more competitive prices. The next up bid was twice this increase. Looking at surrounding areas, they're coming back with higher increases as well. County staff went back and negotiated an extra 10% less than what they came in with their bid, which they probably could have gotten from us at the time. The service right now is not good. We're all very frustrated about it, and we have the fines coming in. It's starting to get better, Miss Dina. They're starting to hire more people in, but our remedy is to continue charging the fines, and if it continues, we can always do a breach of contract and start this back over. But right now, I think we're going to have to do this because I don't want everybody's garbage sitting out in front of the yard here without having some service picking up. So this is something that we worked very hard on, very troublesome, but with increases, as Commissioner Chair Lober said a few minutes ago, there's not a whole lot we can do because we got a few bids in. And even the one that was up higher, you weren't going to get your yard service picked up, and there was a lot of discrepancies on how they were going to pick up your garbage. This is a really trashy situation, but hopefully you guys will come along and get your staff rehired, and we're going to start getting this fixed because it's expensive for them to miss houses right now. And let me also let you know you can call your commissioner offices. We are weeding these calls. We are keeping track of it, and we're helping send this forward. So anything we can do to make it easier for you guys to get us the information. Yes, ma'am, we're taking all the calls, I promise. And we'll do our best to help with this, but it's just a bad situation right now, and I feel really bad about it for the constituents right now. But we're really working trying to get this done. We have a lot of communications with the service company on how they're picking up. So we hear you, but there's really not a whole lot different we can do right now than to approve this contract because it was the one that came in. Otherwise, it would have been double the cost, and I don't think the service would have been much better with the next guy either, but we're working this.
Yeah, I think as well, one of the other providers that bid that was higher as well had far fewer trucks. Is that right, Yuri?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that was my recollection. So I don't know when, even if they were the same price that we would have gone with them, because I don't know with fewer trucks that they would have been able to do the amount of service and keep with it as, even to the degree that Waste Management has, which I think everyone admits has been far from perfect as of late. That said, I don't want to dwell on it too much today because I've talked about it in prior meetings.
Sir,
Yeah.
just for the record, can I
Please.
just read the list of
Yeah,
resolutions
please.
to be approved? What we're asking for is approval and adoption of the following resolutions. The solid waste disposal special assessment in which there is no rate change. The solid waste impact fee rate resolution in which there is no rate increase. Annual collection and recycling, which is a rate charge or increase of 39%. A special rate for non-residential property and compensation to be paid to the collector. Special rates, which are pretty much the gate charges that we do, no rate changes. Certifying, ratifying, confirming the annual disposal rate tax roll, and the same along with the collection. So you have two separate tax rolls we're asking to be certified.
All right, we've got a motion from Commissioner Pritchett. I just want to very, very briefly chime in, and I've mentioned this in prior meetings. I think in the future, when this is coming up to be put out again, probably a couple years before that, we really need to look at doing this in-house. I can tell you I live in Rockledge, and their pickup is just outstanding. I've had one issue in the years that I've been there, made one call, and in a couple hours it was fixed. Titusville, I understand from a lot of folks up there, although I don't think any utility is perfect, I think they've done a very good job with doing that in-house as well. Even whether it's once a week or twice a week, we need to look at perhaps poaching. I know they're going to hate me in Rockledge for saying it, maybe some of Rockledge's staff or Titusville's staff, and bringing them to perhaps help us put together a program here if it's cost effective. Between the issues with us not being able to control the price of third parties and also having problems with pickup, this seems to be the only way that we can potentially avoid having these sort of drastic changes in the future and real issues with degradation of service. So, we're not in a position, unfortunately, where we can do it now. I think there's too much that would have to be done to implement that. But I think, regardless of who's sitting up here at that point in time, it really has to be done. I'll certainly come out and speak in favor of it down the road because I don't think I'll be sitting here at that point in time. But that's the only solution I see in terms of a long-term way forward without having these problems in the future. With that said, I'll go ahead and second your motion. Any further discussion on it? Commissioner Zardi?
I was going to say, I think I made my position pretty clear last meeting. I won't beat a dead horse because I think I'm by myself on this. But again, I think a 39% rate hike, just because Palm Bay did an over 90% increase doesn't make ours right either. What was the answer? Go out to RFP or ask them to do better, but I think 39% is a lot to ask. So I won't be supporting this.
What would happen if we all joined you and didn't support this?
Well, I would never have gotten this far. So you guys already voted it in before. But
What was the alternative earlier?
we could have gone out to RFP, or we could have asked them to come back with a better rate.
Which I believe, Yuri, did we not ask them to come back
Are we
with a
going
better
to
rate?
debate this now, or are we just going to, you've stated your position, I disagree with it, and that's the end of it.
No, and
we
I
can-
respect that.
We
I
can
just
talk
don't-
about it, and we could talk about trash piling up in the streets, but we never should have gotten to this point, in my opinion, so.
I just don't know what the alternative ever was.
Okay.
Commissioner Tabaya?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Logistical question here. Are we voting each one of the six, or are we voting them together? That will impact how I
We
vote.
can bifurcate or cut it up however you want.
you're the chair. I'm just
The
curious.
the motion was with it all aggregated into one, but we can certainly address it whichever way.
Whatever you want. I just wanted to be clear on the motion, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, the motion is with everything contemplated as one, correct, Commissioner Pritchett? All right, seeing no further discussion, I'll go ahead and call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
All right, passes 3-2 with Commissioners Isnardi and Tobias in the negative. All right, we'll go on to item H2. And if we can have staff, Tad, if you give us kind of the bare minimum that we need to get in the record for this, because I think this is going to be relatively non-controversial.
Yes, sir. So this is a request for the board to conduct a public hearing to consider revisions to Chapter 62, Article 6, the zoning regulations to allow for administrative approval of the on-premise consumption of alcoholic beverages for restaurants and bars. This agenda, the code revisions creates a definition for eating and drinking establishments. It creates a definition for for restaurants and snack bars, and it creates an administrative process. Yesterday, the LPA approved it unanimously for the recommendation of approval for the board. Happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Commissioner Tobias had brought this up before, but I think you guys did a great job on this. I support it. So I just want to mention that. I even like the way you pulled out different definitions. So good job.
Sounds like a motion. What you think?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Tobias?
I certainly don't need to make the motion. I just wanted to point out a few things. This will cut the cost about 70% for applicants, saving businesses almost $600, $572. And I know you'll like this one, Mr. Chair. $160 of that is direct advertising costs to the Florida Today. So either way, that'll be more money in businesses' pockets. They'll be able to get these a heck of a lot quicker. And I think that this is something that, small step that can help these businesses start and get back on track after COVID.
All right. Commissioner Pritchett? All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Pritchett. I'll go ahead and second it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay. So we'll move on to the Melbourne-Tillman item, H3. And Jill, I think we can kind of keep this one abbreviated as well, if that works for you. I just don't think it's going to be that controversial. Although I do see a light, so maybe I'm wrong.
I was just going to make a motion to approve because we've already addressed this item.
Is that all right, Ms. Bentley? Do we need anything else on the record? All right, we've got a motion from Commissioner Isnardi. We have a second from Commissioner Pritchett. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
You're welcome, Jill.
You still get your steps in, though. All right, let's see here. This next one, I don't think we need a vote on. I think it's just an opportunity for public comment, H4. Ian?
Hey, good morning, Commissioners.
Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you also. H4 is every year we come before you with our annual action plan. This is a requirement from our federal funding sources. This document lays out the framework for the projects and activities we're going to conduct over the next year, as well as a look back at some of the outcomes we've made. The report itself includes information from our 4 major cities who received their own funding: Palm Bay, Melbourne, Cocoa, and Titusville. And as you had mentioned, this is the first of 2 public hearings. This is just an opportunity for any input from the community, from residents on the process.
We don't have any cards. Anything come in that you're aware of, Mr. Bate? I don't have anything up here.
No, we don't have anything.
All right, I don't think we need to take any action unless the board wants to discuss it in some fashion. Okay.
Thank you.
We'll move on. Thank you, sir. Move on to item H5.
Can we take 5? Do we
Say
have a
again?
lot of cards? Can we take 5 minutes?
Yeah, we can take 5 minutes. All right, actually, we'll make it 10 minutes. I just don't think we can ever get reconvened in 5. So we'll come back at 10:43. ahead. We're reconvened now at 10:43. I've gotten some requests over the break to move up item J2, so we're going to address that. Hopefully, it'll be relatively quick. I'm not going to chair for this one. I'm going to let Commissioner Pritchett handle this. I do have a disclosure on this item. And Ms. Bentley, if I miss anything, help me out if you would, because I've not had a voting conflict in the past, so this is kind of alien to me. So there's a form that I have to fill out, which I'll be giving to the clerks in a moment here, Form 8B, which is a memorandum of voting conflict. And in essence, I'm indicating that I have a conflict or a potential conflict with respect to this item, inuring to the special gain or loss of my relative, my wife, Rebecca Lober. And in the pertinent field, I've indicated it's this item, and that my wife serves as staff counsel and supervisor for the legal department for the clerk of the circuit court. She's a salaried employee of that office, and the requested action would inure to her special private gain or loss. As the requested action addresses both those employees who have been furloughed without pay, which my wife has not been, as well as those remaining employees who have had temporary salary reductions, my wife would stand to gain a direct and special benefit in having her salary restored, depending upon the outcome of this vote. Were the requested action limited to those folks who had been furloughed, or alternatively, if it excluded my wife from the class standing to benefit, I likely would not have a conflict in voting, but that's not what's been requested. If the requests were bifurcated between those furloughed and those remaining, I could have voted on those furloughed, abstaining only from voting on the portion pertaining to those employees who remain and face reduced salaries. So with that, I'm just going to sit here and try to look pretty and let Commissioner Pritchett handle it.
Okay, Commissioner, was there any cards on this item?
There are no cards on this item.
Okay, County Manager, do you want to give us an intro and we'll vote on it?
Actually, I was going to invite the clerk up to speak to the issue.
Okay. Oh, hi, Mr. Ellis. How are you, sir? This is true.
Scott Ellis, 2348 Dorton Drive, O'Galley, Florida. Beginning in March, court revenues plunged. End result for us, we were notified late June we were going to be cut $1.5 million in the fourth quarter. So that's our total loss for the fourth quarter. That will carry forward to be a $1.5 million drop for next year. We had about 25 layoffs. We came in, we put in for this $500,000. That would take us out of our last 4 weeks of the furlough period. There is a possibility that we'll get money from the state. We've waited for a few months on that. It may not come. I don't know what's going to happen with the governor. I don't know what they're looking at up there. If we were to get the money from the state, we would then reimburse the county. There's the possibility if the second CARES Act is passed in D.C., it may allow for the CARES money to be used for lost revenue. If that passes, then CARES money that the board has could be used for the $500,000 as well. Without the state money, without the CARES money, the $500,000 would come from your general fund.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for what all you're doing, trying to.
Oh, you know, we just
hold
hang
this
in there.
together.
It's just the court revenues are just going through the floor.
Yeah, tough time. County Manager, do you have anything to add, sir?
The only thing I would add is that we would pull that money from the reserve, which is well funded right now, and we would be able to replenish it based on the two options that Mr. Ellis has stated. Those are both options. They're already included in the agenda request item for the requested action. Additionally, I spoke with our budget director, and we will be able to replenish, even if it remains in, if the funding remains funding that we've pulled from the reserve, we will be able to replenish that with cash carry forward that we anticipate being higher this year than we have projected, because we had a 30% reduction expected in sales tax for the months of May and June, and those numbers are coming in better. And so as a result of that, we believe we'd be able to replenish with those additional funds any monies that we pull from the reserves for that $500,000.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, do you have any comments or motions?
You got Isnardi and then Tobias.
Okay.
I was going to say, I'm glad you came to the board, because these are, extenuating circumstances, and I can appreciate you trying to make sure that your employees are whole and that they're able to feed their families. I mean, essentially, it's difficult laying anybody off or furloughing anybody, and I'm glad that we're able to help. And hopefully we'll get the monies back, and if we don't, then we should be all right, so.
And we've waited, pretty much every couple of weeks, we're told the state may do it. Well, the state's just never come through. Somehow Volusia Clerk got 1.1 million from the board. I don't really know how they put it under CARES. We don't think it applies to CARES as CARES is written today. We do believe if the CARES Act is modified in DC, then we can use that for lost revenue. That would not just apply to the clerk, that would probably apply to some of your other offices as well.
That's good. Mr. Tobias?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Ellis. I'm going to be voting against this on July 7th. While everyone was very excited up here about handing money over to the Chamber of Commerce and running the CARES applications, I was specific when I said that some of the furloughed folks or the about to be furloughed folks from the clerk's office could be used to handle those applications, which would have got them into an allowable expense for the CARES money. July 7th, again, if you want to watch the recording, that would have, if not covered, gotten a bulk of that $500,000. Now, the county manager is handling that in-house, but obviously that's a loss of productivity from other areas that they would have been working for. So I appreciate the clerk. I can't imagine what it is to come up here and someone that has a history of being so fiscally conservative, coming up here and stating the facts that this is $500,000 that, through no fault of your own, that of the state we may get or we may not. You have put your employees first, and that says a lot about you as an individual. I just want to explain my no vote on this.
And I understand, Commissioner, I mean, we've tried hanging in there. Our total cut was, with the 1.5 million in perspective, that was 50% of our fourth quarter budget got cut at the end of June. So the 500,000 is enough to bring people back to work that we still have. And the layoff people, there's nothing we can do.
Mr. Chair, or Madam Chair, sorry.
That's all right.
As we look forward, 3 months from now, if the courts, don't open up, when may be the next time we see you?
Well, you won't. We were $11.5 million from the state for this current.
Okay.
All right. We were cut to 10. So we've already, through the layoffs, we've adjusted to $10 million. You just cannot adjust a 50% cut in the fourth quarter.
Okay.
So I understand what you're saying, and I don't know what it takes to get the courts moving. We have stayed open the entire time. We've been open to the public the entire time. But we can't force the rest of the courts to operate.
Appreciate it.
Commissioner Snarty?
Yes, how many employees did we use to manage the CARES funding applications?
We have close to 50 employees.
50 or 15?
50.
50. And Mr. Ellis, are your employees trained to manage CARES funding and handle applications and that kind of stuff? Would they have all been able to fill those slots, given their?
Well, what you have to remember, we had the layoffs. The layoffs was probably 15 to 20 full-time employees, and they could have been trained to do it. The difference with the furloughed employees, they're furloughed for 6 weeks.
Right.
So I'm not sure how much training that you all would want to put into someone knowing that they're going to be gone within 6 weeks. And that's your all's call. I'm sure they are in a detail-oriented job working in a clerk's office. So I know they can do that job. I don't know the value of training someone that you're going to lose within a 6-week time frame.
To handle a temporary.
Right. Now, the laid-off people were given information on the different jobs that are out there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but at that point, the easy jobs were already gone. The guy sitting in front of the courthouse, those jobs were gone.
Okay, just a thought on this. I can't imagine they're not going to come back and do something for you. Okay, just doing apples to apples, we gave $2.5 million to CareerSource, and they're getting almost $750,000 just to put people out in places to work. Actually, we asked the question if we could just use some of those funds and have them bring your employees back.
I checked also.
Right, so actually, we just got a little bit of something there that makes no sense to me. It's not logical. So I'm thinking that they're gonna make those changes, and that's gonna help give some of this funding to you, because right now, I have a feeling we're gonna send some money back, so I would rather get it
Yes.
into your hands.
And I think so too, Commissioner. I think the CARES Act is going to change because given the amount of money that went to the counties, I hate to get into Brewster's millions, but it's hard to spend $100 million
It is, even
in
for
5
me.
or 6 months.
Yeah.
Because you still have to follow certain rules. You can't just throw it.
Right.
So I think the rules will probably change to allow for the lost revenue, and that will help you spend some of the other money.
I think so too. And plus, it alleviates some of the pressure off the unemployment money they're trying to give money to also. This way, people are working and getting the funds. So thank you, and thank you for hanging in with us. And do we
Different
have
situation.
motion? Do you have something?
I was just going to
Commissioner?
make a motion to
Okay.
approve.
Ma'am? Motion to approve by
Yes.
Commissioner Zanardi. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Smith. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 3-1.
On behalf of all the employees, I'd like to thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lober, I'll give you back your chairdom.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we'll cross that one off. We'll move back to H5. We do have a number of public comment cards. Commissioner Tobias, do you want to have those addressed first, or how do you want to handle it? Your call. Let's go ahead and hear from them. We've got 8 of them. I'll just give you all the heads up in terms of who we're going to have and in what order. It's the order that's submitted. Mary Pennington from Rockledge. Then we'll have Joan Terry Britton from Cocoa. Then we will have Lazarus Mitchell from Winter Park. Anita Killen from Apopka. We'll have Jason Perez from Melbourne. Howard Offner from Vero Beach. Judy Haston from Summerfield. And then we'll round it out. The last card is from Michelle Hayes, it looks like. Michelle Hayes. Or Michelle or Mary Ann Hayes from St. Augustine. So let's have Ms. Pennington from Rockledge come up first. Morning.
I would just like to state that I highly oppose this ordinance. There's so many ordinances out there now. They can't go grocery shopping. They can't get their car worked on. They can't visit friends. I think I just oppose the ordinance, and that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have Joan Britton from Cocoa. Welcome.
Good morning. I just want to start by saying thank you for all the hard work you do. It's been interesting sitting here and listening and just realizing what you all do on our behalf. So just want to say thank you. And I'm going to try not to get emotional. My name is Joan Terry Britton, and I'm a resident of Brevard County, and I am a registered voter. I'm here today on behalf of my husband, Edward Britton, who has been on the Brevard County Sex Offender Registry for 6.5 years. He is not present today to state for himself how Ordinance 2006-31 has affected his life and how the proposed amendments will affect him. I am here also today to speak as a wife and mother relating to you how this ordinance has impacted myself, our sons, our daughters, our daughter-in-law, our sons-in-laws, and our grandchildren. For example, our married daughter was living in a house where we were told there was an in-home daycare within 1,000 feet of her home, and even though the place looked boarded up, my husband, Ed, could not go to her home. 3 years later, our daughter had our first grandchild. And even though my husband had the great joy of being the first family member to hold our grandchild in the hospital, he was not allowed to visit our daughter's family in the home. Similarly, Ed faces the same situation with our son. daughter-in-law and their 5-month-old daughter. Again, there is a park within 1,000 feet of their home. My husband cannot go to our son's home to visit his family and our granddaughter. I ask, why are my daughters and my son's First Amendment rights being violated? This ordinance dictates to them who is barred from their home. Why can they not have the right to, as who they will grant permission to enter their homes? And when our soon-to-be daughter-in-law wished to fulfill her childhood dream of having her wedding in her parents' backyard, the home previously had been her grandparents', we were crushed to find that there was again a park within 1,000 feet of the home. We took up the financial burden to hire a lawyer to help us navigate this situation. After my husband's arrest, I, as a mother and a wife, was determined to keep our family together. Even though at that moment I had no idea what lay ahead. A big factor in helping our family to fight to stay together were the friends who came alongside us, walking us through Ed's arrest, incarceration, release, and probation.
Ma'am,
Having a support system.
Hang on just one sec. Could I get a motion to give her an extra 2 minutes?
Sure. I'm sorry.
All right, I'll go ahead and second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll give you an extra couple minutes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say, having a support system is so crucial in helping those on the registry to re-enter society and to build their lives and their families back together again. Friends and family who encourage you, support you, who keep you accountable have been proven to have a very positive effect on recidivism rates. Unfortunately, this ordinance makes this very difficult. So I ask, why do you heap more restrictions on those who already have been negatively impacted by this ordinance and will be further crushed if this amendment is passed? Ed and I do live on a very tight budget, but because I work full-time, my husband does most of the weekly shopping. I do send him with a very detailed list. And we have several stores in the area where we live, but the only one my husband can shop at is the high-end grocery store. The other two more economical stores, which are just a short way further down the road, are off limits because of the 1,000-foot ordinance. It may not seem like a big deal to you, but it is to us. And yet my husband and I have a cottage industry which we have been slowly building up for the past 4 years. Just recently, Ed has begun to do this full time. It makes it very difficult for him to purchase supplies and to sell our products because of the restrictive ordinances. Many venues where we would like to sell our products are in parks or near schools. If more restrictions are added with the proposed amendments, this would definitely hinder our cottage industry and our home. I have touched on a few ways that the present ordinance has affected my husband, family, friends. I once had a mindset against those on the registry, a mindset of disgust, fear, and distrust, which this ordinance has created and continues to promote. But my situation drastically changed, and I was forced to study, to read, to educate myself, to speak with others who have walked this path before me. The proposed amendments that you are considering are not going to help those on the registry. In fact, they will do more harm, more hardships. Please, before you make a decision, I urge you, please inform yourselves of the many factors that are involved in this ordinance 2006-31 and the proposed amendments.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I've got to
Yeah,
cut you off. I apologize.
understand. Thank you for your time and your patience.
Thank you.
I do have
In just a sentence, if you would.
3 letters from people who could not attend because they are restricted to be here because of the 1,000-foot residence.
If you just
Am I
provide them
able
to the clerk,
to? Okay,
please. Thank you.
thank you.
And then next up, we'll have Lazarus Mitchell from Winter Park. Welcome, sir.
Oh, thanks for having me here.
Yes, sir.
I'm actually going to have a letter here just because of time. First of all, good morning. And I'm just going to just read it right out, just because I just don't want anything lost in translation. I am Lazarus Mitchell, advocate for human rights for all people, recently asked to serve on the Brevard County of Reentry Task Force Subcommittee for Registered Citizens. My purpose here today is to represent those that have been discriminated against, basically. As a black and gay individual, I personally know how this feels to be treated with a label on your back and to be treated unequally and unfairly by those that don't know me. I know many of those family members that we're discussing here that are doing their best to overcome the stigma. Some wrongfully labeled sex offenders here have innocently taken a plea deal to in having not committed even a crime, and others as such that have served the time and are simply asking for an opportunity to become a productive member in society. Commissioner Izzardi, you suggested that there should be a sign in the front of their homes that reads sexual predator. If I could take a moment to compare and parallel this to a registered citizen. Imagine having a sign placed in front of your yard that says, black or Jew man lives here, or even a gay. The ordinance, both the current and proposed amendments, is simply discrimination, and by enforcing such miscible laws, you would legalize discrimination on all accounts, levels, and areas. Currently, this nation alone is dealing with eradicating issues such as this. I propose that you discard this amendment and repeal the current ordinances as well. My plea to you today is for you to think how even you could see your own life if you were restricted from the rights to travel freely through your community, the right to gather in public meetings, the right to shop where you please, and the right to have family dinner in a location of your choice simply because of a past mistake. In closing, I can honestly say, as a non-sexual offender, that if I live in Brevard County, I will certainly be upset or even angry that 5 people sitting on the board will have the right to tell me who can and cannot be in my home. This nation, once founded, has grown into a land of opportunity where everyone deserves a chance to better themselves. The human condition cries out for less incarceration and more rehabilitation. But this takes me back to a dark time in our history where posting a sign on our lawns or our homes saying, "We do not want your kind here," was considered the norm. As a small boy during the era of segregation, that is a familiar phrase to me. This is America, where all people are free. Brevard County should be acknowledged that they are a part of that one home of the free. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Izzardi?
And I typically don't respond mid-comment, but not only what you said was incorrect, I find it terribly offensive. I don't know how you compare someone's race, sexual orientation, or ethnicity to a sexual deviant who assaults our most vulnerable. You can't even compare the two. You are born black, you are born gay, you are born who you are. That has nothing to do with horrific choices that you make when you assault a child. So you can't even compare the two. So that's all I'll say about it.
That's your opinion.
It is my opinion.
That's your opinion.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next up, we'll have Anita Killen from Apopka. Welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Not sure if I can get that to stay there.
I think the other may work if that's better for you with
Which one,
the
this
gooseneck.
one, yeah? Okay,
I think.
do that.
Let's try
Okay.
it.
All right. Thank you. My name is Anita Killen, and I'm here today because I'm on the subcommittee for registered citizens for the Brevard County Reentry Task Force. And I have several reasons for opposing the amendment, but I only have time to do 4, and I'm going to do them really quick. First, my role is to identify obstacles that stand in the way of helping registered citizens successfully integrate into the community as productive, law-abiding residents of Brevard County, and therefore fulfilling the mission of the Brevard County Task Force, which is to help every citizen succeed. This amendment is an obstacle that impedes the task force from completing their mission. In fact, it's counterproductive to the mission. It impedes it also affects the people that we try to serve. and the potential benefit that it would have on the community when you have productive, law-abiding citizens in your community. The second reason I oppose is that it adds locations to an already invisible map. Now, we all know what I'm referring to here. How do I help someone to identify where areas are off limits? How do I do that? And how do I tell them how to be responsible for doing it for themselves? How do they verify these addresses? I've been given some suggestions that make no sense at all. I'm told you go to Google Maps or you go to the property appraiser's site and you check it out. Well, you have to understand, people coming out reentering society may not have cell phones, or they may not have access to the internet. They are prohibited from using the internet. Another suggestion was to just get in the car and drive around and see if there's any playground equipment. Well, once again, some of these individuals use public transportation. They can't drive around, and why would I tell someone to drive around and look for playground equipment? They would already be violating the ordinance if they had. Another reason is because you haven't produced a single reason why we're doing this. The amendment is not based on public safety, but rather a shaming and discrimination of people who are not committing crimes inside these businesses. The last reason is because you have an exclusion ordinance, 2006-31. It already greatly restricts where their choice of businesses are due to the proximity of parks, playgrounds, schools, tennis courts, golf courses, and many more things that you continue to add to this. And now you're adding businesses and 1,000 foot around each one of those. So to recap, the amendment not only impedes the mission of the reentry task force of your county, but it's based on an invisible map, no definition of the areas, no empirical evidence that supports the need, a vague definition of the policy for one to adhere to it. Hence, there's no way for them to avoid or to responsibly avoid this offense. And finally, there's no process for consistently enforcing the amendment. You see, you have individuals that are trying to be offense-free, and the amendment creates a possibility of arrest just for doing normal daily things, just for carrying out normal business. It creates a new category of crime.
Ma'am, I'm going to need you to wrap up if you don't mind.
I am.
Please.
Okay. It creates a new category of crime where minding your own business becomes a crime, taking care of your personal needs becomes a crime, taking care of your family members or taking your family out for a recreational day becomes a crime. And to me, that is a crime against humanity. So I know that what you're trying to do is protect the community and especially the children of Brevard. And I understand that this is your intention, but there are many factors that have not been considered. There's a serious lack of understanding as to the nature of the sex offender registry and who is actually on it, and a lack of understanding of how it impacts the children and the families. So in conclusion, I have to believe that as leaders of the community, that your intentions are in the right place. There's no question. But what you're proposing is a pathway that's counterproductive and even destructive. So I urge you to replace your fear and misunderstanding with facts and evidence so that all citizens and the agencies, such as the task force, that support them, all have a chance to succeed.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for your time.
All right, next up we have Jason Perez from Melbourne. Welcome, sir.
All right, so I'm just going to read a letter here from my better half. My name is Irene Perez, and I'm unable to attend because the presence of the location of this public meeting would violate Section 74-102 Brevard Code of Ordinance, and I would be subject for arrest. For the record, before I begin, the fact that I cannot be here to speak on my own behalf violates the Florida Governing and Sunshine State Law, Section 286.011. I am a mother, wife, daughter, sister, entrepreneur, student, and teacher. I work more than 60 hours a week, along with my husband, to make sure that our family is being taken care of. I follow the ordinance that is currently in place and feel that the proposed ordinance would not help to keep our children safe. I have 3 sons, and I cannot understand as to why this is being proposed. However, regardless of my label, and as a mother, cannot understand how imposing another 1,000 feet buffer would protect any of my children or anyone else's children for that matter. The current proposed ordinance is but half measured for legislation, to use and say, this is what I'm doing to keep your children safe. But as a matter of fact, it does nothing. See, if you understand how offenses happen, you would know that those who have already done their time, therapy, and paid their restitutions have a low rate of reoffending. Children have become the victim to those who are trusted by society and, more importantly, by parents and the child, such as relatives, close friends, or professionals such as teachers, child care providers, police officers, and doctors, just to name a few, and are awfully likely to offend or are offending and not having and have not been brought to light. You see, people can offend because they are trusted, and so the logic of having a 1,000 feet buffer to protect our children from people who have already been brought to light makes no logical sense. The current proposed amendment to add additional work and stress to our already overworked and understaffed probation officers, they do not have the means to enforce the current ordinance, let alone in addition to one that includes businesses. The probation officers do not have the means, support, nor the manpower to enforce any of the 1,000 ordinance effectively. Imposing another 1,000 feet ordinance will not only add unnecessary work for our police officers and probation officers, but it will put our children in more danger. These ordinances provide our community with a false sense of security. As a parent, our job is to protect our children and teach them to know what is the wrongdoing looks like. The job of our local government is not to impose rules that do not help anyone, to provide knowledge in form of classes and lectures, to educate everyone as to what offending really means and what the sciences are, and how to let our children know that it is not okay and it is okay to tell someone. Parents have the ultimate power over preventing the children of falling victim. A 1,000 feet rule does not, as a mother, make me confident that my children will be safe. In addition to the reasons stated before, this is how those who have already served their time, paid restitution, and completed their therapy is still being punished. How is it that families of those registries are still having to deal with all this after years of completing their sentence when you are released, have done your time, and are integrated back into society? We are conducting ourselves as productive citizens with jobs, and yet we are still being punished and told that we are not able to shop because of the businesses have self-certified themselves to be somewhere where children congregate. As a business owner, I know that this is completely detrimental to all of our businesses as well. This altogether is unconstitutional, to say the least. I highly reconsider the proposal of this amendment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. All right, next up we'll have Howard Offner from Vero Beach, and it says under organization FAC.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks for your time today. The ordinance proposed for public safety is done with good intentions. But as we know, unintended consequences are significant. The premise that Mr. Tobias set forth was sex offenders reoffend at a high rate. The Justice Department study that reoffense rates of sex offenders are actually far below other offense groups. Only 3.5% of registered citizens convicted of another sex crime during a 3-year study. Just to put that in perspective, domestic violence is 40 to 70%. So 3.5% is not an extremely high rate. Florida mandates lifetime registration. But a long-term study released in 2017 by the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation revealed that former offenders' reoffense rate after 15 years, the statistical probability of them committing a new sex crime is indistinguishable from the general population. Look, registered citizens want to obey the laws. They don't want to get arrested, believe me. This ordinance creates invisible boundaries of 4 million square feet, if you do the math, for each business. not to mention stifling their businesses around them. Law enforcement's unsure where these boundaries are. Getting gas, groceries, as stated before, is very difficult. My son is a registered citizen and can't attend because of the laws. Wanted me to put this in the record. Is the ordinance strict liability? Or do the penalties require intent, mens rea? Is simply being unknowingly present within 1,000 feet of a restricted area subject to 60 days in jail or a $500 fine and or? So that's a question for you guys to consider. My daughter attends FIT, Florida Institute of Technology. With license plate laws, will she be pulled over constantly when she goes to school Monday through Friday? They are in person this year, despite COVID. I worry about that. As a member of FAC and a Florida citizen, I simply ask you to delay your vote and review all the facts. We'll give you avenues for research if you deem necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, next up, we have Judy Haston from Summerfield. We have a couple more cards that have come in over the past few minutes here, too. So after we hear from Ms. Haston, we'll hear from Ms. Hayes, and then Chris Curtis from Melbourne, and then Charles Tovey from Melbourne. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Judy Haston. I am from Summerfield. I do not live in this county, and actually this ordinance does not affect me personally. It just kind of hurts. It hurts to see that a county in Florida would consider this. I know that this county has a lot of seniors, and there are registered citizens that live outside of this county that come to this county to take care of their mothers and their fathers. They come here and drive an hour or two from my county. They come here from other counties. They take their mother shopping. They take their mother to the grocery store. They take their mother to doctors. They take their mothers out to eat. And imposing this ordinance, you are limiting, maybe even prohibiting these family members from taking care of their families. I don't know what your budgets are, but are your senior living facilities capable to taking care of the seniors that are in this? What about during hurricane seasons when their loved ones come to help them shore up their homes or take care of them? I have a friend in Marion County who served 2 terms in Iraq. He is a registered citizen. He comes to Brevard County every other week to take care of his mother, and this would affect him. I'm just kind of concerned that this county here would do this because it affects other Florida residents. It doesn't just affect this county. It affects your seniors. This is a vulnerable population. We've seen with COVID-19, we've seen how many of our seniors have been neglected. And here again, we're seeing community leaders not looking after the seniors like that. You also have seniors that are registered citizens here, and you are limiting what they can do as well. So I'm just standing here telling you that I had come from a different county, hearing about this proposed amendment, disappointed that it's even being considered in Florida, and just letting you know that there are other people in Florida that this would affect. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up we have Ms. Hayes from St. Augustine.
Thank
Welcome.
you for your time. My name is Marion Hayes from St. Johns County. I'm going to read a statement on behalf of Michelle Proud of Brevard County because she's unable to attend today. But those of us from other counties are interested in this ordinance because we have to travel, or our registered citizen who may be a spouse or family member has to travel and will be subject to these restrictions. The statement from Michelle Proud says that I'm a woman who lives on both sides of the issue. There are tons of us out there that do. I know we all want the same thing, to protect children. When my sister-in-law's father was dying of cancer alone in Arizona, she was unable to bring him home to Florida to care for him. It turns out that this once young boy at the age of 8 went to a boys' school, one run by our very own government, and he, along with many other boys, were sexually assaulted on a regular basis over several years by the school administrators. Who knew at that time his assaults would eventually land him behind bars and not the perpetrators? Later in life, his wife became very ill. He cared for her until she passed away. He was suffering depression, alone, and lonely. Eventually, he found himself on the internet looking at pornography and eventually some child pornography. Why? It is hard for us to know for sure, but in part we know it was because he could relate to those children. He said as much. He knew those kids. He was that kid. He cried for them as he cried for himself. I guess if you have not walked in those shoes, how do you truly understand what would bring you to this point? Well, this point did bring him to prison for over a year, and he became a registered human upon release. He was never allowed to return to Florida. He is a threat, they say. And so what is the solution? To brand this man a threat? Is this who you intend to protect society from? It would seem the government let this man down as a child. Where was everyone then? Is the solution really to tell this person later in life they're nothing? Now he wouldn't even be good enough to be in a certain store, because some stranger who knows nothing prefers to react to the title he was given of sex offender as if he is actively seeking to harm. That was and would be his life now. Do you honestly think he is someone to be feared? I don't want to live in a world where there are not consequences for your actions, but I don't want to live in a world that does not allow for broken people to become whole and heal. As a young girl, I was offered money to go in a closet to lift my shirt. I had 2 different adult men force long French kisses on me as a young teenager, and finally, at just barely 17, my virginity was taken from me by a 37-year-old man. Do you know what all these situations have in common? I knew them all. So my question becomes, why are we spending so much time, energy, and money on something that does nothing to help a potential victim? The risk is not in the store or even at the park. You see, sexual crimes overwhelmingly occur within a relational proximity rather than a mere physical proximity. Please let us protect our children as best we can and not cause further harm to those families and children by putting even more restrictions on them. We can work together on this for the betterment of society and those we love. Me, that little girl, that young woman, deserves that. We all do. At the very least, let us not put even more obstacles in the way. Thank you for your time. I ask you to vote against this ordinance.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have Chris Curtis from Melbourne.
Hello, thank you, Commissioners.
Welcome, sir.
So, my name is Chris Curtis. I am a resident of Melbourne. I reside in District 5. I've lived in Brevard since 1992, and I'm currently the president of the Brevard chapter of the ACLU of Florida. I would like to speak in that context. I am not a lawyer, but the local ACLU chapter has received letters from sex offenders, and I would like to relate one of those to you. The letter we received is from a gentleman named Eddie. Eddie sent us a letter while he was in prison, or while he was in jail, relating his story, and I looked up his records to verify that the letter was accurate. In 1981, Eddie was arrested on a charge of a sex crime against a minor under 12. It's not clear to me what happened in the record, but it appears that he was not prosecuted for this at the time. He was later arrested for a motorcycle theft and was prosecuted and convicted at the age of 18 for both the theft and the sex crime. At this point, he became a registered offender and was sent to jail for some time. He was eventually released from jail, and according to the public record, he's had no violations at all, with a couple exceptions that I would like to talk about. 3 specifically are violation of probation instances. Each time he was arrested for violation of probation, he was declared indigent, held in jail for about 10 months, and then released with no charges, released without charges. According to his letter, He started to get his life back together. He had a girlfriend. They'd moved into a trailer. They were building a life. And his neighbors found out that he was on the registry and decided they thought his trailer would be good for target practice. After that night, he fled with his girlfriend, and his probation officer declared him in violation of probation. He was arrested again, placed in jail, and this is why he was writing to us. While I was doing the research, I looked up his registry entry, and I saw a picture of a 20, 30-year-old man that said sex crime, child under 12 at the bottom of it. Some time passed, and I looked up his record again, and the picture was changed to a very different picture. It was a wizened old man with a gray beard and someone who looked like they'd had a really hard life. What I noticed was that when someone is arrested for violation of probation, even if there are no charges, this picture is updated. And I realized that this 50-year-old man that I was looking at was not the same person as the 16-year-old who had committed the crime against the minor. So I would just like to point out that this ordinance will last a very long time. I would suggest that it's not protective, it is punitive, it is unjust, and it is cruel. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, our last card on this is from Charles Tovey from Melbourne.
Charles Tovey, Melbourne. And apologize, I don't mean to waste your time or come up here just to gab. I did forget the diagnosis of the lagoon was bradycardia, and you could ask Dr. Nardi, she might know some information about that. But what I wanted to address this issue is double jeopardy and adding on additional, and I respect everybody and everything, but they've already been to court and they've been sentenced, and now Brevard County seems, well, we'll just make a new rule and give them more additional sanctions to adhere by, and that's not fair to them, and it can only be used for people that have been convicted after this time, whatever, if it gets approved or not. And it's the additional burden, double jeopardy, and someone spoke to, it was mentioned as it was evil. Well, how can you figure anything's evil if you don't believe in God? It's just a bad thing, and I just don't understand the terms used and the directions they're used, but I do think, and I'll keep it short, and thank you for having me. It's double jeopardy and adding on an additional sentence to those people that have already been sentenced. And doesn't anybody have isn't that what our whole system's about, is helping people, and I forget the name of it, but recovering from their evil thoughts and deeds. And thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Pritchett? That's the last of the cards, ma'am.
Keith. I just want to give an overview of where I'm at with this right now. One is we changed the definition of park to align with the state of Florida. And what it is that Commissioner Tobias is bringing here is places like Sky Zone, anywhere where children congregate. It has the same definition now as sex offenders not being able to go playgrounds. They already know this. You receive something when you're released to places you can and cannot go. He also proposed a voluntary database, which is smart. So businesses that primarily do this business will register. People will be able to find out if this is where children congregate. Here's a couple of struggles that I have with this. And just from my background, I've worked in ministry for 35 years. And, we're talking about, people that have gone to jail for this. But the worst victim of this is the children, because they don't recover. I've done counseling with grown-ups. I had this happen. They're still paying the penalty for something that happened to them as a victim as a child. And a lot of these become repeat offenders, and it's a horrible thing that happens. So I'm going to always err on the side of the kids, and I feel really bad for the families that are having to suffer through this. You didn't do it, you don't deserve it, but you're having to deal with this because it's your family situation, and I get it. But you know what? When people offend the vulnerable population that trust adults to not harm them, I mean, we've come to a place as a society that just breaks my heart of how we're valuing our children. My opinion is I don't think the penalty's tough enough for what's happening to the kids. And I had a few conversations with some family members, and I started getting a little bit of a thought. And then I get letters from people stating the most foul things of why they shouldn't have to have a further penalty on them. Here's the thing. I mean, even my belief in Christianity, you know, let me throw this out. Moses hit the rock. God still loved him. He got to go with him when he died, but he didn't get to go to the promised land. Sometimes we do things. I mean, you get to live back in society, but you still lost privilege. You know, you get to come in and do things, but you've lost certain privileges. And let me just say this too. Commissioner has already said this, but let me tell you what, being a black, an Indian, a Jew, a female, it's not a crime. My goodness, how do you even compare that as far as a crime towards a child? My goodness, if you look at me because I'm a female and you think I've got an extra crime and I should be prejudiced against, that is just apples and oranges with this. And I hate that argument that comes into us when we're talking about protecting our kids. Now, I feel bad for people that have done better and they're never going to do something again, but you threw yourself into a category to where you have crossed a line, and you can't just pick and choose who's going to do it and who's not, because the goal here is to protect the children. And so I am going to support this. It's not changing the amount of distance that people are allowed to go. It's the same thing. All we're doing with this ordinance is identifying places where children congregate to be able to have an extra bit of safety there in a population right now that we can't control. And so, Commissioner Tobias, I'm going to support this.
Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you. And I probably should have gone before Commissioner Pritchett, because she says everything so much kinder than what I would say. First of all, on a levity, TDC has to thank me here. I brought people from Winter Park, Apopka, Vero Beach, St. Augustine, and Summerfield, and we use no tax dollars doing it, though I don't know that these are the individuals that the TDC is probably targeting. And I thank for everyone getting up here. It's your absolute right to get up here and talk about the impacts that you've had because of decisions. My heart goes out to you that you can't shop at a discount grocery store, that you can't sell your balm at a farmer's market. You cannot choose to have a dream backyard wedding or fill up at the cheaper gas station. I say that extremely facetiously because not once did I hear about the innocence that was ripped from a minor's clutches or the purity that was taken. It is absolutely deplorable that we would have folks get up here and talk about the hardship that was made because they committed, as far as I'm concerned, one of the most vile crimes imaginable. I love Commissioner Pritchett's faith. I wish mine was as deep as hers, but I sincerely hope there's a special place in hell for people that do terrible things to kids, and to get up and see those folks as victims is something that I just don't have. I just don't have the faith to be any nicer than that. But while my office started with this ordinance, once there was input at meetings from other commissioners, the best approach was to allow the county attorney's office to complete it and avoid sunshine issues. So I'd like to thank the county attorney's office for work on this legislation. The county attorney's office implemented Commissioner Pritchett's great idea of using state statute definition of parks from its sex offender regulation as the linchpin. This is a great approach because it does not preclude us from exempting out certain statutes or classifications. Such modifications, and this is very important, would not only apply to the private businesses that cater to children, which was my focus, but it would water down existing restrictions to public parks. At that point, I would be forced to kill this. or do my best to do that. So essentially, what we have now is a binary choice. As a board, we have to look out for A or B. Here's A, and we've heard from A. People that have been lawfully placed on sex offender registries of the state of Florida, or B, children who are playing at public and private parks. I think it's a very, very easy choice, one that I hope the board goes with the latter. And I'd like to cite, and I never should do this as a non-attorney, but Florida Statute 943.0435, Section 12. So this is statute here. The legislature finds that sexual offenders, especially those who have committed offenses against minors, pose a high risk of engaging in sexual offenses even after being released from incarceration or committing that are protected of the public, and sexual offenders is a paramount government interest. Sexual offenders have a reduced expectation of privacy because of the public's interest in public safety and in its effective operation for government. Statute has laid it out pretty darn clearly. We should place the burden for meeting this on the people that are lawfully placed on this sexual offender registry, and we should do our best to look out for the children's innocence and purity. It's terrible that we have to do this, but I think it's a step in the right direction. So when we're done, I'd like to make a motion to approve the ordinance and amendments as proposed in the agenda packet, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Nardi?
Yes, I don't want to go sideways with this, but, people have a tendency to throw around statistics. Well, when you look at the first 3-year statistics, they don't look as bad as the 5 and the 25. Let me just read something real quick from something that came out of the U.S. Department of Justice when I looked at a study. Similar to the pattern for rapists, child molesters with more than one prior arrest had an overall recidivism rate of nearly double. So that's somebody that's been arrested more than once, 44.3%. And the ones that have been arrested once have a 23.3%. They looked at almost 5,000 sex offenders. So if that doesn't make, you worry a little bit. I've read numerous studies on this. I've read numerous books from psychologists because I really wanted to dive in. Excuse me if I don't sympathize with someone that harms a child. I just can't. Because one thing you didn't hear, other than the last woman that came up from another county to talk about somebody that she probably didn't even know personally, and I'm not sympathetic for anybody that looks at child porn, no matter what unfortunate circumstances happen throughout their life. But one thing you didn't hear, you heard people saying, we demand these rights, but you didn't hear their story. Because odds are their story isn't a sympathetic one. You're on the sex offender list, and God help you if you're on the sex predator list, because that's even so much worse. So I won't apologize for trying to protect kids, and I fully support this ordinance. And again, I know we keep going back to this, but nothing is more offensive than trying to compare the discrimination for race or sexual orientation than to that of a sex offender. You can't even compare the two. And there aren't words for that. So, I will support your ordinance, Commissioner Tobias, and the stricter the better as far as I'm concerned.
Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is obviously a very emotional issue for people on both sides. The only issue I have, and I certainly support this, but the only issue I have is that as a Christian, I know that there is redemption and forgiveness. But the big problem I have with the quote-unquote sexual offender tag is that there are other sexual offenders other than adults to children. And I've used this example before. If a 18-year-old boy has a 16-year-old girlfriend and he doesn't know that she's 16 for various reasons, then he's labeled a sexual offender for the rest of his life. So I'm not sure that this isn't something that the state shouldn't revisit and come up with some particular definitions of sexual offender. And maybe some of those could be erased after a period of time. I don't know. I'm not a state representative, but I'm just thinking out loud. Because to put everybody in the same box isn't fair either. But we have to do what we have to do to protect kids. So I'll second your motion.
Well, it sounds like I'm going down in flames on this one. But I had sent out, I know Dave Berman got a copy. I sent one to Space Coast Daily as well. Kind of a long memo that went out regarding a number of issues that I had with this. That was sent out, it looks like, on July 29th. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's 6 or 7 pages, but I do want to read certain portions of it. I don't doubt that this particular proposal could do some good in certain situations, but I am concerned about unintended consequences and broad brushing folks that aren't just those that are among those that commit the most vile crimes imaginable. Looking here, I want to address just a few examples of someone that could land on the sex offender registry that, quite frankly, I don't know ethically, morally, or otherwise really needs to be on there. I talked previously about Florida Statute 847.0133, which penalizes giving obscene material to a minor. I think it's a great example of potential overbreadth for any sort of a sex offender classification or anything that would apply to folks that are classified as sex offenders. All that has to be proven under that section is that the defendant knowingly sold, rented, loaned, or gave away, distributed, transmitted, or otherwise showed obscene material to a person under the age of 18. So let me give you an example. If you had an 18-year-old high school student who shows a 17-year-old classmate a Playboy magazine, the 18-year-old defendant could find himself, or herself for that matter, convicted of a felony for violating 847.0133. To make matters worse, in accordance with 943.0435 Florida statutes, the 18-year-old would be classified as a sex offender when they were convicted. So most, I would say many, if not most, would find that these facts alone, that they're resulting in someone being a convicted felon and a sex offender, is very inequitable, and it isn't remotely proportionate to what was done. I don't know that we benefit by broad brushing those individuals along with people that are raping children and serial pedophiles. Those folks I have no empathy for, but there are a lot of very marginal cases that could land someone as a sex offender. So let's talk about another. Let's change the facts up a little bit. Let's say the defendant and the victim are both 17 years of age. Let's say instead of a Playboy magazine, that the minor defendant tries to pass an obscene drawing to his minor classmate, just a drawing. And let's say it doesn't even get to the classmate. He tries to do it in the classroom, and the teacher intercepts the drawing before it even makes it to, I guess who you'd call the victim in this case. So again, defendant 17 years of age, victim 17 years of age. The drawing is just that, a 17-year-old's pencil-drawn obscene rendition of, let's say, his or her ex-girlfriend or boyfriend engaging in a profane act with another person or an animal, whatever. The victim never even sees the drawing. And that absolutely could count as a lesser included offense of attempt under 847.0133. And here's the funny thing, or the not so funny thing. If you look at Florida statute section 943.0435, it would still classify the defendant in this instance as a sex offender. And it's nonsensical to me. So how can it be? So for purposes of 847.0133, obscene material is defined extremely broadly. It includes, I'm just going to quote out of the statute, any obscene book, magazine, periodical, pamphlet, newspaper, comic book, story paper, written or printed story or article, writing paper, card, picture, drawing, photograph, motion picture, film, figure, image, videotape, videocassette, phonograph record, whatever that is, or wire or tape or other recording, or any written, printed, or recorded. It just goes on. So, I'm sure there are folks that would say, well, certainly police officers and prosecutors can exercise appropriate discretion in these cases, can't they? Sure. But they're not obligated to exercise discretion. We're not guaranteed that they'll do that. So that the fallback, well, a judge could dismiss the charge, right? No, they can't dismiss the charge because they don't like how it would apply to someone. You need a legal valid basis or a valid legal basis to throw charges out. A judge having the sensible belief that the ramifications would be grossly inequitable and too severe doesn't amount to a valid legal basis for getting rid of a charge like that. So let's say if the obscene material were instead emailed instead of being provided physically. One could also be convicted of violating 847.0138, which prohibits the transmission of material harmful to minors by an electronic device or equipment. And the prosecution would only have to show that the defendant knowingly sent an image, information, or data that he knew or should know or believed to be harmful to minors, that the defendant shared the image or sent the image, that the information or data to a specific individual, that was sent to a specific individual who was either actually known by the defendant to be a minor or believed by him to be a minor, and that the defendant sent the image, information, data via electronic mail. So the defendant and the victim could be the exact same age, and a conviction could still result. The defendant's age isn't an element that the prosecution has to prove. The email doesn't even have to have made it to the victim for a conviction of at least one of the two lesser included offenses. So this includes, let's say, if the recipient's mother or father intercepted the email before it even made it to the same age classmate. Now look at sexting. There's a good one. Well, it's true that 847.0141, which prohibits sexting, is not among the offenses which requires registration as a sex offender or as a sex predator. It's entirely possible that one would still end up being required to register for sexting. Now, why is that? Two reasons. One, the statutory limitations on what constitutes sexting are so restrictive they may not permit a prosecutor to file the charge in certain cases, for instance, where the minor recipient solicited the message or where the minor recipient didn't attempt to report the photo or video to his or her guardian or a school or a law enforcement official. And two, if you look at Florida statute section 827.071 sub 5 sub a, that prohibits possession, control, and or intentional viewing of material including sexual conduct by a child, and it doesn't require the defendant be of any particular age. There are a variety, and I can't go through 6 or 7 pages at 11 something during a meeting here that's not dedicated solely to this, but there are a variety of situations that make absolutely no sense to treat identically to folks that are raping kids or that are serially abusing people. As Commissioner Smith mentioned, you've got a number of crimes that have nothing to do with children, that are adult-on-adult crimes or minor-on-adult crimes, where the defendant, the victim isn't at all under 18. I don't know that we need to be treating those folks the same way. I don't know that we need to say that folks that are sex offenders pose the same level of risk as sex predators. I don't have a problem, by and large, with implementing something substantially similar to what's been proposed to those folks that are registered sexual predators. But the problem is when you look at offenders, the list is just so ungodly broad. There are many situations in which it just doesn't make sense. I don't see how it protects children to keep folks like the folks that I just gave examples. I don't see them as being a threat to children. I don't. Someone that's a 17-year-old that shares a pornographic magazine with a buddy of his that's 17, or hers, or whatever the case may be, is it a bad thing to do? Sure. Is it something that I would want my kid to do? No, not at all. But is that something that I think now we need to start prohibiting them from going to additional places over and above what they're already prohibited to go to? I don't see that. And a 1,000-foot limit for someone that's in that classification, it just seems extreme. So, I gave other examples over video voyeurism and a bunch of other things that I think are concerning with respect to what was proposed. But, I think there are a couple of things, because I don't think I'm going to get anywhere with trying to talk people out of this. I really don't. I think folks' minds are in all likelihood where they're at, and it is what it is. But I think there are a couple things that if you do decide to pass this, which sounds like it's going to happen, that I think you should look at including. We need to extend the existing exception permitting those folks who are on the sex offender or sex predator ordinance, or that the sex predator or sex offender ordinance applies to. We need to continue to allow them to travel on those public roads through the buffer zone within 1,000 feet of a prohibited location without undue delay. We already have that on our existing ordinance. I think we need to ensure that that applies to this regardless of what we do. Otherwise, now we're telling people they can't even drive past on a public road to get from point A to point B if they have no intention whatsoever and do nothing to suggest that they're stopping at some place you're prohibiting them from being within 1,000 feet of. Another thing, and I think we've heard a little bit today about it, we may want to look as well at adding or advertising an amendment to Section 74-102 sub B of our code to add an exception to permit those folks that are on the lists to attend duly noticed Board of County Commissioners meetings so that they can provide public comment without the fear of being arrested. You don't have to agree with their comment, but it is a little troubling that we can't have folks here that this is going to directly impact. I understand that they've done things to put themselves in that position, but I still would like to have heard from them, and I think it might have been better than having folks reading a letter where really they can't answer questions that we may have that would apply to the individual that wrote that letter. I'm concerned that this is very overbroad. I do think that a lot of the emails that were sent in relation to this issue, and I know that you all got them because I saw that I was copied and you were copied on them, a lot of them were really vile. They did a lot to push me, in fact, in the direction of supporting what you proposed, Commissioner Tobias. I had one individual call me, and I'm going to quote here, an ignorant, and I'm not going to say the next word, it's the less polite way of phrasing a female dog. because he didn't like what I had to say on this. And then I found out the same guy victimized a 14-year-old in another state. You know, these folks that have been pushing by email, by and large, have been pretty repulsive, and I don't think they're doing their cause any sort of favor. And I don't really enjoy taking a stance that would benefit them. But the problem is, in my own research, putting aside the nonsense that they've sent all of us, I just don't think it's fundamentally fair. I know it's not a popular position to have. I know it's great to say, well, you know, let's be tough on crime and just hammer the living heck out of everyone, including those folks that may fall through the cracks for sharing a sketch with a classmate that has someone's genitals in it. I don't see it. Commissioner Pritchett?
You're probably absolutely right on all those things, Commissioner Lober, but the problem is that we make policy, but you have judges and state attorneys that decide that. So as we're doing this, someone's already determined that they shouldn't be at parks or around children. So that's why I think I'm fine with this. They might need to fight that somewhere else. I'm guessing if someone was 18 or 19 and it happened with their girlfriend or something, that there should be some kind of legal thing that you can do before an attorney and a judge and maybe get some other circumstances done. But I also have noticed that sometimes pleas are made for lesser charges too when they're really not that bad. So I agree. I think there's probably something that really needs to be done in the state level as far as definitions and how they define those things, so not everybody's thrown into it. But I think if somebody already has parameters put on them that you can't go to parks where kids are, I'm comfortable with this right now at this point. And again, if you have those 1 or 2 or 3 that fall into that, my heart goes out to them, and I would like to see that change for them later down the road too. I think that's got to be probably a state attorney thing, or maybe even how the judges interpret those things at those times. But again, I'm going to support this, but I do understand what you're saying, and you're a smart guy. So, but we probably need to change that somewhere else.
Appreciate it. Commissioner Snarty?
I was just going to say, for the benefit, I know you know what the Romeo and Juliet law is, and
Sure.
that gets people off of the sex offender list if it's consensual sex, if one of them is an adult and one is a minor, as long as, I think, is it 4 years age difference, and they have to be over the age of 14, I think is what I read. So there are protections for people who were, convicted by angry parents years ago that, with the younger girlfriend or boyfriend. So I think that kind of protects that relationship. I don't know personally of any cases where somebody, and I know I didn't get any emails, were cases where people were convicted of sending emails with lewd stuff, or where parents intervened and took, where someone was convicted of that kind of crime. I'm sure they exist, but not any information or correspondence that my office received. The big concern was they just didn't want us to discriminate, or the fear was discrimination against people who were on the list. So again, most didn't offer their stories. They were just angry that we were putting something in place. So I'm ready to move forward.
Commissioner Tapia?
Thank you, Chairman Lober. And this is your fault for bringing up the
Everything is.
email. So I have to share with you my favorite email that I received on this one. This is from a registered sex offender, and I quote, "Don't worry, there's no curse words in here, so we'll be okay."
Shucks.
Quote, "I have a few things left on my bucket list, but I'm going to add being alone in a room with you for 3 minutes to them. Although, from your picture, I think that's 2.5 minutes too much."
He did have a sense of humor, at least.
You can read that a couple different ways. I'll leave that to your imagination. So we do read the emails, no matter how crazy. This one is laminated and hanging on my wall. So Jennifer Kaw, if you're out there listening, talking about how much more successful my brother is, you are now in the second spot of emails. This one is moved to number 1.
It's a good one, sir. All right, we don't have any more lights. Would someone like to make a motion? All right, all right, we have a second from Commissioner Smith on Commissioner Tapia's motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Passes 4-1 with me in the negative. All right, let's see where we're at here. We can go ahead and address item K and get it taken care of. There's one card, Robert Burns from Vieira. Going once, going twice. Last call for Mr. Burns. Okay. All right, we don't have anything further on item K. So we will move on to item I1, which is the group health plan designation change. And before staff gets to that, bear with me just a moment. Yeah, Health First had reached out to me, and I just want to put this on the record and ask that I'm just quoting them, abstain or recuse myself on all votes relating to Health First and its subsidiaries for the duration of service on the Brevard Board of County Commission. I'm not going to do that. In fact, it would be illegal for me to honor that request. Florida Statute 286.012 requires that I vote absent a legally recognized conflict of interest. I don't have any sort of conflict of interest that could even arguably rise to that level with respect to this. So I just wanted to make known that they did make that request of me. I am declining it because I don't have a choice but to decline it. All right, Steph?
Okay, let me be the first to say good afternoon, Commissioners.
Almost.
Almost?
Almost. A couple minutes early.
Okay, this item is back before you. This is a series of recommendations from the Board's Insurance Advisory Committee to make changes to the group health plan design. These changes are, in the committee's opinion, necessary in order to close the gap between projected expenses exceeding our revenues in the current and the next two future group health plan years based on actuarial findings. The committee worked very, very hard to look to minimize the impact on employees with these changes, but they knew that changes were required to be made now so that we can avoid some more draconian changes off in the future. These are baby steps that are necessary in the time of COVID uncertainty. We really don't know ultimately what the impact on our group health plan is going to be this year. These are first steps that the committee felt were necessary to start working on closing that funding gap. So we asked the board's authority to go ahead and implement these changes.
Right. I'm certainly in favor of it. I don't know where other folks are, but Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Visco. Last meeting, I errantly asked for this to be tabled. I think I asked for it a month. Obviously, unfortunately, this was 3 weeks here. The next meeting is September 15th. Can you tell me, should we table this decision till September 15th? Would we see, what would the impact to that be?
It would dramatically impact our ability to move forward with our open enrollment plans for this year. We need to implement these plan design changes, get the data fed to our carriers. We can produce the information necessary for our employees to make open enrollment decisions. A delay at this point would force enrollment back maybe out of October into November, which then delays the start of the plan year well after January. So we really would like to move forward if
Commissioner,
possible.
let me ask you, because if it's one of the, and I don't know that this is the case, but if it's one of the two plans that's addressed, maybe we can vote on the plan that there's no question about it, assuming that's the case, and then we can talk about the other plan if you have concerns about one of the two offerings.
I'd rather leave it as one, and
Okay.
he's brought up some valid points here on this. I was just curious as to why it was put here instead of the meeting at September 15th, and it sounds like you've laid that out. There will be some financial repercussions if we wait it back.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Commissioner Pritchett?
I just want to mention, I had a gentleman call me before the last meeting. He had a way to try to save us some money, and I asked staff about it, and they said they're still able to move forward with negotiations on that. So that won't have any reflection on us voting this through. They'll still be working with the entity to try to do the savings.
Yes, ma'am. We'll evaluate whatever comes in. We've shared data over about a month ago now. We still haven't gotten anything back from the group. And if we do get anything, we will definitely work with them and evaluate their proposals for potentially future RFPs.
Commissioner Darty?
And I just want to, because in the future, I obviously, the opinion back from the Ethics Commission is not to vote on Health First items. This item went out to RFP, and I confirmed with the county attorney that I'm allowed to vote on this.
And this
In case
item
there's
is
any
internal
questions.
design as well, so
Right.
you've got several layers of protection.
Okay.
Correct, Commissioner. You've already voted on the element that would have impacted Health First a month ago, or a July 21st meeting. This
Right.
is all internal plan design.
Yeah.
All right, may I have a motion?
So moved.
All right, a motion from Commissioner Isnardi. I'll go ahead and second it. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, this item passes unanimously.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. All right, item J1. I may be the stick in the mud on this one, though. Yeah, I saw this as, just as we have staff come up on this, we had an appraisal for $130,000 on this item, and the property owner isn't willing to take less than $135,000. I can just tell you at least how things have operated in my district, and you're welcome to agree or disagree. If they have their own appraisal, and it's a reasonable appraisal, I'm not necessarily opposed to splitting the difference, but it sounds like he just doesn't like the appraisal because it's not as much money as he thinks he can get, so therefore he wants more. I don't know what our next cheapest alternative is to accomplish the same or better results, but my concern is even if we have to pay 2 to 3 times or 10 times as much on this particular item to achieve the same thing, it may be worth it in the long run to avoid setting a precedent that will pay over market value for a piece of property. So I can tell you, barring something extenuating from staff or from one of my colleagues up here, I'm fine with 130 because that's what the appraisal was for, but I don't want to give them 130 and a penny. I'm very concerned about the precedent that would set. The last time I did something like this, it was on that property north of Walmart on 520 for the demucking. They wanted a small fortune for that. I said, no, that's not going to happen, and lo and behold, they came down to reasonable land after that. Same thing with Griffith's Landing. We had some property we were looking at over there. The seller wasn't being reasonable with respect to matching what was asked based upon appraisals. So that didn't happen either. I'm not going to change suit on one particular project. I think it's too important to keep the precedent that we're not willing to pay more than market value for the county. So I don't know if you care to jump in at this point. Virginia, do you want to take it? Yeah, I'm sorry to be a stick in the mud on it.
So the problem is how to talk into this thing and point over here. So this is US 1, and right there is the storm drain coming from US 1 onto the property. The blue outline is the property in question, and you see this forested area to the north of the property. And so what happens now is that the DOT runoff runs through this forested area and then discharges sediment. There's a large sediment plume. This is, of course, the nice, clean, sandy bit. There's also lots of organic muck going into the canal that is directly connected to the lagoon. So this is the LiDAR imagery. And so you can see the elevations. These hotter colors are higher elevation. The greener is the lower elevation. The box here is the property in question. So this is the place where gravity will allow us to capture the water and sediment coming off the road, treat it, and discharge it in a controlled fashion instead of having it erode through the wetlands. So I don't have any debate about the value of the property, what the appraisal should or shouldn't be. I just wanted the board to understand, the problem that we're trying to address and the situation of this parcel for being able to provide a solution.
Commissioner Tobias, and then Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I understand your point about setting the precedent. Can you help me balance that with today F33, which I thought was a great pull on your part, one that I did not catch, but you clearly did. That was the executive session in Brevard County versus Feinberg.
Sure.
It's my understanding we generally negotiate somewhere in the middle of the proposed settlements. This one actually went a little bit more for the other side. However, that balanced with, say, the court reporter and the staff time, the county saw a benefit, or you saw a benefit, I guess, and one that I missed, and I really appreciate you bringing that forward. What I'm concerned about here is the additional cost, will it be above the $5,000 that the potential saving is here for, you know, if we have to, I don't know, whether we eminent domain this, whether we find another solution that would be made far more cost effective. Again, it's $5,000. Again, it's $5,000. If they were asking, what is that? About a little over 3%, then the appraisal. You know, within I imagine a margin of error there. Is this a wise fiscal decision here over 3% that we may not see we may actually see a detriment if we have to find a different way around this?
Commissioner, I'm going to address your question as best I can without putting the county in a bad spot, since that case that we referenced in F-33 still hasn't been fully resolved. We simply gave authority to settle it for the amount that was specified.
Correct.
I would just call to your attention that there's more than just the question of what the property is worth in those settlement sums. There are other costs that have gone into that, and the settlement number that was proposed contemplate those costs being factored in, not just the property itself. That's also something that's been ongoing for some time. I don't know whether I would have been in favor or opposed to the taking back when this was originally done. I don't remember, was this from 2013 or 2012, Ms. Bentley? 2013. You know, I can't speak as to what happened prior to my having been here, but I think that the circumstances with that are sufficiently different, namely in that we're not just talking about the cost of property. We're talking about a suit that's been filed, and now legal costs that we're obligated to pay and other costs that are associated perhaps for their expert witnesses, things of that nature. So I don't know that it's an apples to apples. I can't really speak, and I would give it to Virginia or someone on staff as to what the next meaningful alternative cost would be. You know, but certainly if you think that it's worth $135 and that's, you know, what you think it's worth, then by all means support it. I can't change my position on it.
No. My point was to compliment you on the previous
No, I appreciate
the previous poll, not. So a couple of questions. I guess one would be for Virginia. That would be the one with your
sure, and then I believe we have
then the
Commissioner
second
Smith.
one would be for the county attorney's office. I know there needs to be a supermajority, I believe, if we pay. Is it a percentage over market value, or is it just over market value?
That applies when you have a purchase of $500,000 or more. That's when that statute kicks in, and it's the average of two appraisals. You don't have that in this case. You have a simple majority.
Okay.
Because of the value.
Thank you for clearing that up. Now, with your
Please.
discussion, Virginia, can you tell us what other options we have if we decide not to accept the 135 to help clear this issue up?
I don't know if we could acquire the adjacent wetland that the water is currently washing through and washing soils out of. We would then have wetland impacts, which we would have to mitigate for. You know, we haven't looked at what the cost of that would be, but the wetland impacts would likely drive up the project construction costs considerably.
Follow up, Mr. Chair.
Please.
More than $5,000.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Smith?
Thank you. I questioned staff during my briefing with them yesterday, and I'm like you. I initially just dug my heels in because I don't like people to just arbitrarily come back and think that, well, we're dealing with government and they have a lot of money and I'll just raise the price. But staff told me this property is ideal. It's ideally located, and the appraisal that we got on it cost $2,800 or $2,900. So if we went out with another appraisal, we're real close to that 135 number anyway. So being that this is a very important project and the property's ideally located, and if we purchase it, it's no fuss or muss afterwards. We don't have to mitigate wetlands. We can go right to work on that property. So, and it is in my district. I have not gone out and looked at it, but I've seen the aerials. So I would support this because it just doesn't make financial sense to dig our heels in and be saying, well, we're not going to give in and we're going to be stubborn.
Yeah, and just to clarify one thing as far as another appraisal, the circumstances that I've addressed and dealt with that have dealt with multiple appraisals, we've gotten one and the seller has gotten another. So I don't think there's a reason for us, if we don't question the validity of our original appraisal, to go out and spend anything to get a second one. But if the property owner isn't happy with it, I would have no problem if he came back, assuming the appraisal is legitimate. If the appraisal said 140 and it's a legitimate appraisal, that staff can say it meets all the requirements that they would ordinarily expect, I wouldn't have a problem in that circumstance paying the 135. But again, I think we may win in the battle with respect to this, but I'm just concerned it's going to cost us in the long run. So I understand where you're at. I respect it, but it sounds like you may have a 3-2 anyway in that case.
Well, and in the interest of time, I don't think spending any more time talking about it's going to change anything. So I would like to make a motion to approve this.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Smith. A second from Commissioner Nardi. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Nay. All right, passes 3-2 with Commissioner Pritchett and myself in the negative. Okay, so let's see here. We've already addressed J2 and moved that up. All right, J3.
Okay, thank you, Commissioners. This is me again. This is consideration of filling a vacancy on the Save Our Indian River Lagoon Citizen Oversight Committee. We have an opening for the alternate position for outreach. The person that was previously selected is moving to the other side of the country. And so the ordinance allows the board to either choose a replacement from an old or existing pool of previous applicants or advertise for new applicants. There were 2 people remaining in the prior applicant pool. I contacted both of them. One was still interested in serving on the committee. The other is no longer interested in serving on the committee. So you have the application for Ms. Newton, who is interested. Otherwise, you can direct us to advertise for new interested volunteers.
Commissioner Spaya?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your help explaining this previous to the meeting. It's my understanding that there will be some vacancies in the next couple months. Is that other vacancies?
I have not confirmed that, but that's what we've typically experienced, that when the terms are up in February, is the next time the terms are up, that there would likely be several other vacancies.
And do we generally get a lot of applicants for vacancies?
It depends on what the field of expertise is. So for this particular one, 3 applicants is pretty typical.
Okay.
For real estate, there are a lot of people with real estate experience in our community, so then we tend to get 7 or so applicants for those seats.
From your perspective, not a policy perspective, but from the administrative perspective, would it be a lot more convenient to hold off, appoint this person temporarily for a couple months and then hold off for the permanent replacement when we see the number of vacancies increase, when you said traditionally will be about a couple months? Would that be easier from your perspective?
It's a minor amount of administrative work, bringing the item back, advertising and bringing the applications back to you. But certainly, the board could approve this person for the remainder of this term and still direct us to advertise that seat as potentially vacant for you to consider new recruits in February.
Along with potentially other ones, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Makes sense to me. What do you think, Commissioner?
So make a motion to appoint this Ms. Newton, is that correct? Ms. Newton to fill the vacancy of the Sorrel COC seat for the remainder of the term. Direct staff to advertise for the seat again at the conclusion of the term, hoping that Ms. Newton applies at that point.
I'll go ahead and second that motion. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, J4 was deleted, so we'll move on to J5. We do have one public comment card. I don't know if staff would like to hear that first, or if you want to address first. What do you think, Mr. Golden? All right, Robert Burns from Vieira. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Robert Burns, Vieira. For this item, I'm going to ask that you abstain from this vote for the following reason. Last year, I submitted a campaign finance complaint against your campaign finances for your election to the current position you hold. You made a deal with the FEC for that complaint and hired an attorney to represent you. I'm going to read in pertinent part from that response. The malicious motivation of the complaint admittedly does not change the rules over elections, given there is substance to one of those allegations. With respect to the first allegation, as reported by Mr. Lober, he used his personal credit card for campaign expenses. Mr. Lober himself reported the use of the credit card for those campaign expenses because he was under the mistaken impression that use of credit cards by local candidates was permissible. This indiscretion was a result of a genuine misunderstanding of Florida Statute 106.125. Mr. Lober genuinely believed that Florida Statute 106.125 regulated the use of credit card by candidates for statewide office and specified for the requirement for the use of credit cards and candidates for statewide campaigns without restriction outlined in 106.125. Complainant learned of Mr. Lober's use of personal credit cards solely through Lober's own candid disclosure and publicly accessible campaign finance reports. While ignorance of the rules is not an excuse, Mr. Lober certainly did not commit a knowing and willful violation of Florida Statute 106.125. In conclusion, this complaint is motivated by a complainant's personal animosity toward Mr. Lober. In his campaign finance reports, Mr. Lober clearly reported that he used his personal credit cards. Any violation related to the credit card use was a mistake, resulting of what Mr. Lober mistakenly believed the statute meant. The reason I brought this complaint forward is because you said that during your campaign that you self-financed, but you used your credit card for over $200,000 worth of campaign expenditures. That, as you admitted, is incorrect and due to your misinterpretation of the law. Since you use your credit cards to buy the public trust for this office, I'm asking if you will submit those financial records to the public so that we can see who actually paid those credit card bills. During the campaign, you said you used your cards so that you could profit from the campaign by earning Sky Miles using your credit card illegally. So we would like to see if you actually paid those credit card bills yourself or someone else did, which is a way to get around the $1,000 limit for each individual contribution. So until that is taken place, we would ask that you abstain from any votes on financial issues for the county. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will point out that a number of statements there are objectively incorrect. I'm not going to go through each and everything, but suffice to say, if that gentleman had a pot to piss in, he'd be sued for defamation today or tomorrow. Ms. Bentley, even if everything that he said was correct, which I will state is an objective fact, it's not, would that rise to the level that would allow me even permissively to abstain from voting on anything?
From what I heard, they all relate to elections issues, which are not necessarily county expenditure issues, and I don't see anything that's inuring to your private financial gain.
So I would not have the option to abstain?
I don't believe so, no.
It's a problem with Google law. All right, staff, if you would, please.
The item in front of you is a request to authorize the county manager to sign an agreement with Independent Living Systems for meals to support the food stability program. This is a little over $2 million agreement. It will come out of the $4 million that you've already allocated. These funds will provide for about 25,350 meals a week through the end of the calendar year. One of the reasons this agency was chosen was that they have informed us that they're able to, if the need arises, go to 3 or 4 shipments per week. If that were to occur, I would need to come back to you to get additional funds, because with this contract, our estimated obligations under the food stability program is about $3.8 million, out of that $4 million. The document itself has been approved by the county attorney's office, risk management, and purchasing. It is a single source, non-competitive. We do have the emergency order that is in place. Additionally, after discussions with purchasing, it would be 6 to 8 weeks to get through an RFP process, and because this is food, We felt that that was a justification to move through this process as it is before you. Additionally, purchasing had previously gone out for some type of food program. I believe it was for meals at the EOC. They had one respondent, so there was a belief that this would not be a competitive procurement, and that one respondent does not have the capacity to provide this level of meals.
Commissioner Tobias? Old light. Commissioner Snarty?
I was just going to say, and I know you've talked a little bit about this before, but can you talk about how these meals are going to get to people? Like who's going to be touched by these meals a little bit just for the benefit of the public?
Sure. What we're planning to do is with the meals is we're going to try and backfill the Second Harvest and other food banks. We're going to backfill some of the pop-up pantries that are at our churches primarily, trying to reach out to other vulnerable populations. One of the things that we've identified is with the agreement that you approved for the Children's Hunger Project, that weekend meal program is really targeted to school-aged kids, elementary school. 17 of the 22 sites are actually at elementary schools. All 17 are at 65% or higher free and reduced lunch. 5 of the school sites are at 100%. So what we're looking at is to see if we can't also supplement middle and high schools that have those same type of levels of free and reduced lunch.
Anyone have anything further? All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Pritchett. Go ahead and give the second to Commissioner Isnardi on that. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, sir. All right, we'll address now board reports. Mr. Abate?
No report.
Ms. Bentley?
No report.
Commissioner Pritchett? I'll be brief on this, and I didn't intend to bring this up, but I think context is always an important thing. And I apologize that our time has been wasted by a gentleman with some false allegations, but I do want to point out, I think that things have changed and he's been reinvigorated to a degree now that the losing campaign that he ran is concluded, because I'm representing an Army veteran who has stated that he raped her. And I understand as well from her that he took a plea in the Army and was demoted and lost at least one rank as a result of having raped her, or whatever it was that he pled down to on that basis. It's unfortunate that we have to get into something like that when we could really be doing other things that benefit the community, but apparently that's what this gentleman chooses to spend his time on. Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been approached by a constituent willing to do conservation work, and so I contacted the county manager's appropriate permitting and insurance, and the county attorney's office had done a draft almost overnight, but all that is probably in our emails right now, so this is very limited, and it would be only in my district. So I'd like the ability to constituent to have that opportunity.
I'll take that as a motion, which I'll go ahead and second. Any discussion? Ms. Bentley, do you have anything?
And can the county manager be authorized to execute the agreement?
Is that your motion, Commissioner
Yes,
Tobias?
please.
And that's what my second contemplates as well. All right, any discussion on it? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Certainly. Commissioner Smith?
No report.
Commissioner Isnardi?
Yes, and I briefly spoke with Ms. Bentley about this. We had a little bit of a convoluted, understanding of what some of that abstaining from votes would be, and I know it applies differently based on RFP and internal stuff. But I would like, and of course I'm going to come to the board before trying to do this on my own, because I would be more comfortable if Ms. Bentley took the lead on it. But I would like to get an opinion from the Attorney General, if possible, because since the opinion came out most recently with, how I could vote future with CARES money and stuff, I've had attorneys contact me that disagree with the opinion. So I'm not saying that they're right, any more right than the opinion that we received back, but I think that the best and most long-term solution, because assuming things go well in November, I'm going to be here another 4 years, and every time something comes up with Health First, I don't want to hold anything up, and I don't want to injure an item based on whether or not we can vote or I can vote. So
I'll do one better for you. I'll go ahead and pass the gavel to our vice chair. I'll go ahead and make a motion. You do have to call on me. Thank you. I'll go ahead and make a motion to authorize staff to draft any necessary documents in order to procure an Attorney General opinion at the request of any commissioner without having to come back before the board until further direction of the board.
I just don't know if that's risky or people might get a little too out of hand with that. I mean, do you want to set limits on it?
I don't think anyone's going to abuse it up here. That way, if someone else has something, they don't have to ask the board to get permission for an opinion. If they want an opinion, God bless them.
All right, well, Ms. Bentley, if you could just give us a report back to the board if the commission office asks for more than a couple a year or something. I don't know, or just maybe an automatic
if
report.
you want to limit it, you want to say 2 a year? I'm fine with that if you think it's a concern.
That's fine.
Okay, so we'll say any commissioner is authorized.
I'm not saying any of us would get that way, but you never know.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I don't think I'd need more than maybe one every couple of years. Any commissioner would be authorized to request an Attorney General opinion on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners without having to bring it back before the Board of County Commissioners.
There is a rule from the AGO's office that requires the board to request it. I don't know how they would react to a delegation in that manner.
Yeah, and
I
I
do
don't
have
know
to
that-
state the board requested it.
And I don't know that I want a commissioner asking for an opinion from the board without it coming back to the board, unless it was from them as a commissioner in their own office or as in their position. You know what I mean? Because
I don't think they can do it. I think it would have to be on behalf of the board because I don't know that the Attorney General's office would be obligated, or I'm not even sure that they really would respond.
But it
if
may
were
be
just an
because
individual
it's required to have a vote.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm fine. That's fine. I'll go ahead and withdraw the motion in that case.
All right, well, so with that, I'm just going to ask that, obviously, any and all questions that we have regarding Health First, my employment with them, and any items that may come up or any situations, there's probably about 3 or 4 probably that we can think of. I just want to make sure there's not a conflict, and I want to make sure I'm doing my job by voting if I can.
Fine by me. What do you think, Commissioner Tamayo?
I'm okay with that. Legal question for Eden. Is that okay, Mr. Chair?
Please.
I love putting you on the spot. So how does that work if we get an opinion from ethics that is different from AG? Does the AG take precedent over?
I think the Commission on Ethics actually has the control in that arena. The Attorney General is going to be giving an opinion, but I think it's delegated to the Commission on Ethics, I think under the Constitution.
You had to rub that in since I teach government, didn't you?
I'm sorry.
Appreciate it. I appreciate it. So you're saying it, and I don't care. I'm still okay with. I'm just.
Yeah, I haven't looked at that in a year or so, but that's my memory of how that goes. But we could make the effort to see if they would
I'm okay with
respond. And are you more concerned about abstention or simply voting conflicts?
Probably voting conflicts,
Okay.
I would say. I mean, because they kind of go hand in hand, right? Because you want to
They
make sure
do.
that you're following the law
Yeah.
by voting. And it would be easy for me to say, oh, I have to abstain. You know?
Right, and there have been differences of opinions that we have heard on abstention. There's the appearance of impropriety or voting conflict, and there is language saying that you can abstain when there is an appearance.
Right.
But there are other opinions out there that have verbally said, oh, you must vote. So if you don't have an actual voting conflict, but there's language saying if there's an appearance. So we can maybe work on getting some clarification on that for you.
And
I think that's the worst problem that you've got at this point.
Right, and again, I just want to make sure I'm doing everything legally.
And just to make sure I'm on the same page, that would contemplate sending the Attorney General's office, the Commission on Ethics findings as well, would it not?
We would need to give full disclosure.
Okay. All right, I just want to make sure. Yeah, I'm supportive
And then
of
are you
it
guys, okay if there's more questions that arrive from this, or if there's some clarification that we contact the Commission on Ethics?
If you want to bring it back again, since we're meeting in a few weeks.
Yeah, I'm saying in the future, if there's more questions after we talk to the AG, or if we need clarification on their opinion for any of it.
Well, I can tell you I'm curious too, because our previous county attorney had a different opinion.
That's what I'm saying.
When Andy
And
Anderson
there's-
sat there, and he worked for the city of Palm Bay, the previous county attorney, his opinion was that the things that we were voting on for Palm Bay didn't go directly to and/or could be conceived that Andy Anderson was benefiting personally.
Yeah.
And therefore, it was okay for him to vote on those issues. This ethics report would indicate that he should not have been. So I would like to hear the difference too, because kind of we're in limbo now.
Right.
Okay, so do you want it as a motion, or how do you want to do it?
Do you need a motion?
I would think it's probably cleaner. What do you think, Ms. Bentley?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll make a motion to request an opinion from the
Second.
Attorney General.
All right, we have a second for Commissioner Smith on Commissioner Rosnardi's motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Anything further?
Nope.
All right. We have, let's see, we've addressed J2, we've addressed K. All right, we're adjourned at 12:33. Thank you all.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.